If you have rosemary and honey at home and still haven't managed to completely reverse Alzheimer's, you are committing one of the greatest sins. Today, I'm going to show you how, with just honey and rosemary, it is possible to restore memory and put an end to all types of dementia, mental fog, or memory lapse. I'm always asked how I managed to memorize so many texts and scenes. The truth is that even at a young age, I started to show failures in my attention to my memory. But since God does nothing by halves, during the filming of the last season of The Chosen in Jerusalem, I discovered a sacred recipe of golden rosemary that they take every day before going to sleep that is capable of ensuring that even 90-year-old seniors remember even childhood details with total clarity. The smell of grandma's cake, the color of mum's dress, the voice of dad singing. In the first week, I noticed that I was more focused and attentive. I delivered the text much faster. Even the director praised me because I was recording all the scenes on the first take. I didn't miss a line. I can state that this recipe was a true miracle in my life. But when I came back here, I discovered that I was not the only one who knew. Recently, I saw a video from Dr. Dale Bredesen, a renowned UCLA researcher, founder of the Mary S. Easton Center, and writer of several books like The End of Alzheimer's and The Ageless Brain, talking about this same recipe. In the video, he explains why this sacred recipe of golden rosemary is so powerful. In short, this is the only recipe capable of dissolving a toxic crust that forms in the brain over the years. And it is this crust that withers and locks new.
Let's see. So about 15 years ago, Dan Schultz started PRECINCTstrategy.com. And since then, a lot of folks have been very active and productive in conservative, good, God-fearing community activity. And so PRECINCTprojectusa.org is basically a way that we help to recruit folks to continue growing the movement and growing the effort. So if you sign up at PRECINCTprojectusa.org, then we will connect you with a point of contact for your state. Sometimes we have also a point of contact for your county. And you'll receive up-to-date messages on our monthly webinars and the weekly X Spaces that Dan Schultz and Jonathan Broadbent have going on. And actually the first one is tonight, or for this week, tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, and tomorrow 3 p.m. Eastern on X. So everybody is welcome to get involved and find out how you can be.
Very much, Velma, and Velma works with us as our administrator. She will answer questions. She'll direct you to your state if you want to sign up. So we'd like everybody to go to PRECINCTprojectusa.org and sign up. Over the last couple of days, I've been on a number of programs. We've got a lot of people sign up, and we want to get hundreds signing up today. So our first guest, Charlie Fleischman. You want to bring him? He is a Republican and out of Virginia. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, good afternoon. Do I bring my slides up? Hi, I'd like to introduce myself, Charlie Fleischman. I'm co-founder with my partner, Danny Slayman, in both Advocates Hub, which is a software development focused on building Republican units and communities and precincts up, and Advocates in Action, which is a 501c4 that helps funds our efforts to grow the grassroots. Our motto is to build the elephant one neighbor at a time to grow the grassroots. Well, I'm going to go quickly through a couple of the parts of our other software products. Not really going to talk about it quick, but one is Rise Up Now that allows us to get issues out. ChurchVote.now that allows us to get the churches involved in the grassroots environment. And then Republicans Advocates, which gives unit support to Republican units and gives them a full CRM system. But today, we're going to, with the church vote, again, is we're leaving a lot of votes where people just don't want to be engaged, and we have to get them involved in church vote. And Rise Up Now is both national, local, and state issues where we set it up where they can come in read about an issue and actually go down to the underlying bill so they can be an informed public to help build the grassroots support for things that are either pro that we want or negative that are coming from the other side. Why I bring those up is because they all feed into Precincts Pro. Precincts Pro is where we build our neighborhood ambassador program to actually grow the grassroots down at the precinct level. And as you can see, those other software tools feed Precincts Pro. So if somebody else hits one of those other sites, it allows us to get their information, invite them to become a neighborhood ambassador and grow the grassroots. So I'm speaking to the choir here, but here in Virginia Beach, we have 108 precincts. So far, I've only got 12 precinct captains, but I'm working very hard on that. But on the neighborhood ambassador, I've got 48 ambassadors and 325 neighbors that are participating. So we're growing it underneath the party. Reliance on old tools, spreadsheets, paper, whatever, that doesn't work, doesn't help us. Door knockers, everybody's gone to paying door knockers. The candidate doesn't know the person that they're paying actually shows up. Do they really represent the candidate? But then they're all one stop and then they're gone. Our Precincts Pro program is a 365 day program to meet your neighbors, make a connection, and keep them informed. A lot of the other programs, no voter list access. We bring voters data in from I-360, from L2, and from GOP data center or from local units. We push it all together. So when we go down to an address, we're just talking about the people that live at that address across all those data sources. We are also able to update that data. So we have curated data at the end. We know when somebody's moved, it's been updated, somebody's been deceased. So it'll help in the election integrity of cleaning the voter rolls. Precinct operations are seasonal. When you say precinct captain, everybody thinks, oh, I got to man the polls. We don't look at it that way. We look at it as a year-round process to get voters engaged, to get them involved, to get them to learn some civics and help build a better country so we don't fall off the cliff here, which is coming very close. And then the other thing is we've tried to limit the typical internal divisions within the Republican Party. We've made the system so if the chairman changes or if there's a riff and somebody else takes over, all of our products immediately transfer over to the new one. So the organization keeps going no matter what the leadership fights are going above it. And then lack of standardization, training, and support. So we provide training with our system, and we've also incorporated AI into the system. So it allows the end user to actually talk with our AI called George and steps them through the program, answers their questions, can actually help them write some of their content. And then the other thing our Precincts Pro does is we offer it to organizations, churches, PACs, and candidates. And we allow them to, if they both agree, to share data across that. So if you have two candidates running in the same district, they can both share the same neighborhood ambassadors and precinct captains. So key features, custom target, federal, state, and local. We built this on a national site. All the precinct-based calculations are for political positions. We can assign multiple precinct captains to a site, to a location. And then we've included a walk list and canvasser and survey capability, although we're not trying to be in direct competition with the other paid programs that are out there. But we want to have that capability for our precincts. Precinct captain, view the voters. These are the functions they can do. They can manage their neighborhood ambassadors. They can form leadership teams, create walk lists, recruit volunteers, identify sign locations for placement, connect with businesses in the area. They have a full ability to email everybody in their precinct, to text and email their precinct captains and their neighborhood ambassadors. Precinct captain also can provide the limitation to what you'll see on that. Those are all voters and they're all color coded, with blue obviously being Democrat, red being Republic, and we include veteran symbols as well. You'll see that in a minute. This is what a typical demo site dashboard. You have site resources, you have precinct management at the precinct captain level, you have neighborhood ambassadors, and then the canvassing. The neighborhood ambassadors only get to see limited parts of these functions, but it's a full management site. We can bring up, if we have the data for a state or a location, we can bring a site up and start them and get them going within 10 minutes. The The Precinct Captain Toolkit can create walk lists for their canvassers to go out, as well as surveys. One of the problems we had to do is cover is how do we keep out unwanted guests? How do we keep out people, Democrats that are trying to get in and influence? So everybody that signs up to a neighborhood ambassador comes in as a pending status. Whoever is the admin for that site comes in and looks at them, sees their data. If they know them, they can accept them right away. If they don't, they can click another button that gets more information about that person, and then it'll go and tell what are the voting records for anybody at that address. If they're still not confident they want to let them in, then they can reach out with their email and phone number that's provided to them, just like it's provided to each of the neighborhood ambassadors. When a neighborhood ambassador signs up, we verified them. They sign a data agreement, so we make sure they're not sharing data outside the system. And then we provide them 12 neighbors. And those neighbors will be color-coded depending on what the precinct manager of the site sets. It could be just hard Republicans, soft Republicans, swing voters. It can be changed, so you can go out and do different types of canvassing. And then they show up as a hard Republican with a bright red. If they're a veteran, we also have a medal to show that they're veterans, so we can focus on that community as well. I want to leave enough time for a few questions. If you look at this QR code, it will take you to our Precincts Pro. As I mentioned, we are in a national. We're in Illinois, LA, Ohio, Virginia, and Wisconsin. The only states that we have full data for are Virginia and Wisconsin. Under our Advocates in Action and the 501c4, we're trying to raise funds to get more data to expand out into the rest of the states. And I've put my contact information in the chat. Is there any questions?
Can you hear? Yeah. Can you tell us how to reach you, because they can't see it in the chat? We have multiple podcasters on all over, and they will not see this. There you go. Okay, you want to repeat that and go?
Okay, so I'm Charlie Fleischman. Up here, you can see Republican Advocates. Down here at the websites, Advocates in Action is our 501c4 if you want to donate. If you go to this precinctspro.com, which is the same place this QR code will take you to, you'll be able to sign up, pick one of those 5 states for a site, and then we'll contact you and get you going. If you want a site for your area, you can select either, send an email to either Danny and I, or info@precincts.com. And this telephone number will reach both of us, or it'll go to voicemail so we can go back to you if we're not available.
Not enough precinct captains in Virginia. Can you tell us how we're going to get more captains there?
I'm also the vice chair of my local party. I've got them to buy into the system, and Danny is in the Chesapeake, and both of us are pushing them through our systems. We're starting by first getting people to sign up for neighbor ambassadors, and then we get one of the neighbor ambassadors and talk them in to be a precinct captain. In Virginia Beach, they have to be a member of the party. So at each party committee meeting, I'm beating people over the head to get them to sign up for training. I have the same issue here. We have a lot around the rest of the country, where most of the people that come to the committee meetings are my age or older. So it makes it a technical challenge for them, but we've tried to make the system simple enough. And with the addition of our AI, George, it's made it very easy to get them to use the system either on a computer or on their phone.
Thank you very much. That's a presentation. We have a little echo. Sorry about that. And we're going to bring on our next guest. Our next guest is from Michigan. She's a district chair, CD9, Lori Skybo. Lori, come on down.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Velma. Thank you for having me today. What I'm going to speak to a little bit about today is the challenges that we have, not only just here in Michigan, but I believe across the country, which is what I'm going to call the grassroots succession crisis, and how political parties really fail to build institutions. If you've been involved in politics for any length of time, you've probably heard the same conversation repeated every election cycle. We need more volunteers. We need more precinct delegates. We need younger people. We need to recruit. Those statements are all true, but I don't think that's our real problem. The real problem is that we have confused building campaigns with building institutions. campaigns are temporary, institutions should be permanent. A campaign is really, there to elect a particular candidate. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it really is focused on raising money, recruiting volunteers, communicating messaging, and then obviously on election day, it either wins or it loses. An institution is different. It exists before the campaign starts, and it should be stronger after the campaign ends. When political parties fail to build institution, everyone ends up paying the price. Our candidates pay the price because they spend valuable time rebuilding volunteer networks. They're recruiting their own precinct captains and leaders. They're finding their own election workers. They're organizing operations that really should already exist. Instead of focusing on communicating their vision and earning votes, they really should be focused on becoming, that forces them to become focused on organizational managers. Volunteers, also pay the price because every election feels like we're always starting over. The same people carry the workload. The same lessons have to be relearned. The same handful of precinct delegates become responsible for everything until burnout actually becomes inevitable. Local candidates often pay the highest price. A presidential campaign can build its own infrastructure, but a candidate for a local school board, a township trustee, a county commissioner usually can't. They rely heavily on the political party to provide the functioning grassroots organization. Donors actually pay a price too. They don't just invest in candidates, they invest in competence. And every election really begins with rebounding the same organization from scratch, and if they're always doing the same thing over and over, confidence actually begins to erode with our donors. Ultimately, it's the voters who pay the price. Fewer trained volunteers and precinct delegates mean fewer conversations at the door, fewer neighbor relationships are being built, fewer election workers, fewer opportunities to get out there and persuade, educate, and turn out our voters. So building institutions isn't separate from winning elections. It's one of the most effective ways that we, of making elections possible. But too often our political parties function more like a disconnected campaigns instead of an enduring institution. Every cycle, we scramble to recruit volunteers and precinct delegates, identify new leaders, and train new activists. We have invested tremendous energy in winning elections and far less energy in developing organizations. A healthy institution should never be asking, who will help us win this election? It should be asking, who will be leading this organization 5 years from now? One question, that one question kind of changes everything as you're recruiting your precinct delegates. It changes, how we recruit. It changes how you train. It changes how we delegate responsibility. All of those change. It also changes like everything that we would actually define successful terms. One of the greatest weaknesses that I see is in grassroots politics is our dependence becomes on individual personalities. And I think you can probably relate to this. Every organization has that one person, the one person who knows the bylaws better than anyone else, or knows the convention rules better than anyone else. It's the one person that has all of the volunteer contacts, and it's that one person that everyone calls when something goes wrong. And they are invaluable, but they are also a risk. If your organization cannot function without that one individual, you haven't built an institution, you've really built a dependency. Institutions survive leadership changes because our knowledge should be shared And responsibilities are distributed when new leaders develop when new leaders actually become developed before they're actually needed. I believe the most overlooked responsibility of any grassroots organization is that leadership development. Leadership development is intentional. It's just isn't someone that you're seeking to volunteer. It should be something where you're actually inviting that person in to lead. That might mean asking someone to chair a committee instead of serving on one. It might be asking a newer precinct delegate to organize an event, facilitate a meeting, or take ownership of that project. The goal is to give people opportunities to lead while the stakes are still low, and that they're surrounded by experienced people who can coach, encourage, and then quietly step in if that person needs help. And I learned that lesson firsthand. When I was a brand new precinct delegate myself, my county chair asked me to lead my own precinct delegate sub-caucus. And at the time, I assumed that there had to be some practical reason. Maybe nobody else wanted to do it. Maybe he couldn't find anyone else willing to do it, but I certainly did not think that I was the most qualified person in the room. And to his credit, my county chair didn't just hand me the job and then wish me good luck. He actually spent a little bit of time with me. He prepared me. He gave me the materials that walked me through the process, answered my questions, and made sure that I understood exactly what I was going to need to do to lead that caucus. And as I'm leading the caucus and I'm talking to, my fellow mates and inside of that caucus, someone casually mentioned, well, I used to be the county chair. And then someone else mentioned, well, I was a staff member for so-and-so Congress member in Washington, D.C. And I remember looking around that room and thinking, why am I the one leading this caucus right now? Clearly, these people have decades more experience doing this than what I have. So it wasn't until years later that I realized what my county chair had actually done. He wasn't just filling a vacancy. He was actually focusing on developing a future leader. He intentionally gave one of the least experienced people in the room an opportunity to lead. Not because I knew the most, but because I had the opportunity to grow the most that day. And he created an environment where I wasn't set up to fail. I was surrounded by experienced activists and precinct delegates and other leaders who were there to step in should I actually need them as that safety guard. So that experience really taught me what real leadership is when you become a precinct delegate or work your way through the other, chair and other leadership positions inside of the party. It isn't holding on to responsibility because you can do it better than somebody else. Leadership is really about creating those opportunities for other people to discover that they can actually do that job too. If we only trusted the most experienced precinct delegates with the most meaningful responsibility, we will never create more experienced delegates here in the state of Michigan.
1 minute, Lori.
Mhm.
Lori, 1 minute. You've got 1 minute.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, sorry. So with that, I'll kind of leave you with, what the key takeaway is make sure that, you're not just building your campaigns, that you're really not just focused only on elections, that you're really looking for to leave a legacy to the next generation. Campaigns ask, how do we win? And institutions should be asking, what are we leaving behind?
Thank you very much, Lori. And also, when you get out, we'll knock you out. Go to Stern American Rumble if you want to watch it live.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all you do in Michigan. And we hope we get more captains and chairs in Michigan because I know we're a little short.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
thank you very much. We're
Thank
going to run our flag shirt video now for about a minute. All the expenses that are paid are by the flag shirt for this. So we always run this a couple of times during the thing. Thank you very much, Lori. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Flagshirt.com, a third generation. Steve Stern, CEO of Flagshirt.com, a third generation veteran-owned small business. I believe that the American way of life is for all of us. I'm asking you today to visit Flagshirt.com. Help keep the American dream alive. Be a flag waver. Carry a nation's heritage. Use coupon code ACTION10 for 10% off site-wide and buy a flag shirt today. Action, action, action.
Okay, our next guest is going to be Matt Hawkins from Washington. Go ahead, Matt, you're on.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve and Velma. Trying to figure out how to turn on the screens.
There you go. You got it.
Okay, so how do I?
We're seeing it.
I'm just trying to figure out how to advance it, but that's okay. So the what we have in front of you right now is Washington State. In Washington State, I have another slide here that I'd like to show you, but for some reason it's not. I can't get it going. We had major fires this last weekend, and in this the confluence of these fires, the one thing that was left standing at the end of the day was the American flag. The entire neighborhood was ravaged and taken out, but I think this picture gives me hope that what we are up against with these major battles on our civic landscape is that we can have hope that at the end of the day, this is all about our American values and trying to restore something for the benefit of our future generations. When we take a look at that, I love the Precinct Strategy Project, and I recognize that in Washington State, we've been trying to activate the precinct strategy across the state. At the end of the day, we realize that our urban centers continue to control everything that's going on within our state from the standpoint of all policy. But this is where the Precinct Strategy Project, I think, can come alive in a very major way. Because as I listen to Dan Schultz, he talks about how maybe only half or a third of the precincts are actually filled up across the nation. And yet, if you take a look at those precincts, I think you'd find that we actually have control over our rural counties. The project that I'm working on is Counties First. And Counties First is trying to utilize the access point of our precincts, especially in our rural counties, to restore the voice of counties back into the state government. Because as we found out in 1964, all the counties were relegated to a gerrymandered process, and our state senates were lost to the urban centers. If we can take the precinct strategy project we have within our rural counties, for example, in Washington State, 80% of our counties really are of a conservative mindset. If we can take those 80% of the counties and activate them into restoring the voice of our counties back into our state senate, I'm confident that we can turn our states around. This would allow us to reverse the course of history on how our history has been kind of taken from us through a Supreme Court ruling in 1964. If you think your voice matters, you've got to believe that the rural counties should have that opportunity to stand up. Counties were one of the original voices that we had within our governing processes as the colonies came out of the earlier history before we became a nation. And when you consider that, and you consider how our Constitution was written, we were written to be a Republican form of government, which is a representative form. All of our states have been gerrymandered to the process that our urban centers have control. Counties First, along with the Precinct Strategy Project, can change that course of history and can give us back to the kind of representation that we once had. So if you want to learn more about it, I would recommend that you go to countiesfirst.org and learn how this application can benefit your state. We're talking right now with people across the nation. So this is not just a Washington issue, but this is an issue that can really be applied into most other states. That in a nutshell, Steve, is about where I'm at with this. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, we can move on to the next speaker. And if I can put on that.
Yeah, how do people get involved in Washington? I know that's a blue state and you want to get people involved. How do we do that?
You get involved by, first of all, going to the website, countiesfirst.org, and become familiar with this topic of what we have, because we have a book that's written on it. The book talks about the history, it talks about the problem, but it talks about the solution. I'm not here to present just a problem and badmouth everything. I'm here to say we have the benefit of a solution. And that solution is to be activated really by the.
I guess we lost them. Okay, so Velma, I know we're short somebody in New Mexico. Tell us how to get in touch with you if somebody's listening to New Mexico and wants to get involved.
Oh, for sure. So my email address is Velma, VELMA, at Rule of Law Committee, RULEOFLAW committee.org. Or you can just go to precinctprojectusa.org and register. And I'm the one who receives all the communications. So I think what's happening is that we have a lot of folks who are doing incredible work at their municipal and county and state level. But they're also very, very quiet, or they've done a lot of work for many years and all of a sudden are kind of taking a step back and shifting to do something different. So I think what we're trying to do with Precinct Project USA is provide an open network of the camaraderie, just like as Lori was explaining, that everyone has an opportunity to lead, everyone has an opportunity to really grow their relationships and their participation right beginning in their neighborhood, and grow your leadership capacity from there. There's a lot of folks over time who have started as a precinct captain or equivalent in your local area, and then have become a member of leadership at the county level or the state level, and then even the national level, or run for office at municipal, county, and state. So I also want to reflect on Lori's participation, that she's absolutely right, that it's so important to have that network, to have that organization, to have those relationships. Because at the end of the day, we can really only be successful in advocating for our local communities if we have those connections. And that really is the responsibility of a precinct committee person. So, with regard to, Matt's leadership, I also want to commend Matt Hawkins and the state of Washington from his presentation, that he had actually provided some really great insight, because every county, or a lot of counties, every state rather, and sometimes down to the county, but mostly every state, forgive me, has different procedures in terms of how to run for a precinct committee person, how to become a captain or representative in your ward or district or precinct, depending on how your county or state defines it. And so at precinctprojectusa.org, if you go to your state, you can see like snippets of what that procedure is. And then the point of contact in your state has more information as to what the specific protocols are. Sometimes the county GOP lead has that information. Sometimes the state GOP lead does, but oftentimes we're finding that there are local GOP folks who are learning about the precinct strategy as well. So it's really important for us to collaborate and learn from each other. And I also want to really commend Charlie's presentation, because technology is really important. And one of the things that we're looking at for a webinar a couple months from now, because also in Pennsylvania, Nevada, Delaware. They also have very strong ways that they use voter data for outreach and recruiting. So hopefully we can invite them to speak on a webinar so folks can have a little more interactive with that. So
Thank you very much, Velma. Our next guest, very important. We were very lucky to get him to come on. He is a YR, which is a Young Republican. He is in charge of the YR Student Caucus Committee for the Manhattan YRs. And why this is important, because, you know, I'm 85. A lot of our people who are in the election precinct strategy working are in the 60 to 90 age, and we need young people on. So Michael is going to tell us how we can get young people involved. Michael, come on down.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for having me today. It's a real pleasure to be here. As Steve mentioned, my name is Michael Giannino. I'm the Student Caucus Chairman at the New York Young Republican Club. I'm also the founder and president of Turning Point USA at Baruch College. I also currently serve as a constituent liaison in the New York City Council. And most recently, I became an official speaker for Turning Point USA. I'll be going on tour with them as part of their Pick Up the Mic initiative, making my way through campuses in and around New York City, Long Island, New Jersey. So I'm really looking forward to that, to be able to connect with the youth even more. One thing I could say in New York is that you often feel like you're behind enemy lines, especially as a student. You're told that you're everything that's wrong with this city, this country, and quite frankly, that's just not the case. I mean, with the recent rise in democratic socialism that we've seen in New York, it's pretty scary the way things are shaping up to be, and that's why it's more crucial now than ever before to mobilize the youth and really get involved. I never thought that, going to school in the heart of New York City, a deep blue New York City, that just a half mile away, I'd find a place like the New York Young Republican Club that I had one day call a second home. And it's truly been a life-changing environment for me to be in. They've provided so many opportunities to get involved. And one thing I hear by so many motivated young people, not just in New York City, around the whole country, is that as motivated they are to get into politics and try to make a difference, they often get discouraged because they feel like it's so hard to get your foot in the door. And the beautiful thing is that when you have resources like the New York Young Republican Club behind you, that is absolutely not the case. They've done so many things to connect high quality candidates with people all across New York City looking to get involved. And that shows up in a variety of ways, whether you're looking to just connect with like-minded individuals, that's one thing. And they do a million different incredible events to connect with like-minded individuals, which in New York is quite rare. But the amazing thing beyond that is that they have something called the Campaigns Committee. And now the Campaigns Committee serves two purposes. One, to identify and endorse strong Republican candidates throughout the state. And two, to lead deployment efforts through grassroots initiatives such as canvassing, phone banking, poll watching. And these things really do make a difference, more than you could ever possibly imagine. And why I say that it's so important, not just for the candidates, but for the individuals as well, is if you are looking to get involved and get your foot in the door, there is no better way than to do so through grassroots efforts, such as getting involved in a campaign. And the way New York Young Republican Club sets up their deployments is absolutely incredible. They fill busloads of people, get them out to the district, knock on doors, and really connect with the entire voter base to make sure that this candidate is well represented. And, we have a very strong success rate with our candidates. There's been plenty of years where we've gone undefeated with our endorsed candidates. And this year alone, for the upcoming elections, we're endorsing people like Mike LaPetri, Pamela Michos, Brandon Castro, Ramses Frias, Tom Stanton, Lester Chang, Michael Novikov, and Ethan Harris. So we got a good quality of candidates there, and we're going to be doing plenty of deployments going forward, and we've already done them throughout the summer. I personally was at one in Queens where we were knocking on doors for Michael Petrie, and the turnout was great. We had, I couldn't even tell you how many kids, at least 30, 40 kids that knocked on doors for an entire day. And the reactions were great too at the doors. I think people are really fed up with the direction that this city's going in. And, you know, we see that knocking on the doors and engaging with the community. I think it's a very specific kind of person that wants these changes happening. And what I can tell you is that it's not the New Yorkers, it's the transplants, the people that come here from elsewhere, and they want to bring things that failed in their state to our state. And it's really shocking, and it's scary to say the least. So it's absolutely crucial that we get involved. In addition to all these deployments, the New York Young Republican Club does things like one event that we have coming up is our Meet the Candidates event, which will be taking place on August 13th at 7 p.m. So you'll get to meet all of those candidates and engage with them one-on-one and interact with them, get to hear their views and their plans for their districts should they get elected, God willing. And yeah, it's incredible the work that the New York Young Republican Club does. And the way they're able to connect with young people across the city and the state as a whole is amazing. And the way they mobilize the youth is just phenomenal. So we need more people to come and get involved because you can never have too many. And I think a big issue is not that we lack numbers, even though it may feel that way at times. I think it's more so that we need to get people out to vote. We need to get them out to the polls. And unfortunately, the numbers just don't reflect that. You know, I can't tell you how many people during the mayor's race was complaining about this mayor that we have now, hoping and praying that he doesn't get elected, but they didn't show up to the polls. So I'm sorry, if you're going to sit there and complain, I don't want to hear it unless you're showing up to the polls and you're doing your part to be the change that you want to see. If you're just sitting at home hoping somebody else is going to do the job, that just doesn't cut it in my eyes.
So Mike, tell me how people can anybody get involved in the Manhattan YRs? You have to be a certain age?
So anyone could get involved, though typically general members range from the age of 18 to 40. That's typical. There are some options for older people, though they're limited as to what they have access to. You know, hence us being the New York Young Republican Club. We try to really connect with the youth and mobilize them as much as possible and get them involved and get them motivated and passionate to really make a difference here in New York. I mean, walking around here, it's so discouraging, especially in schools today. I mean, it's actually sickening as someone who's still enrolled in a university, the things I hear and see, the amount of left-wing ideologies that are pushed on me on a daily basis, and to oppose them is bigotry. I mean, it's ridiculous. So a lot of people are more motivated than you could possibly think. I think we've gotten to a point where there's somewhat of a silent majority, if you would, it might be a stretch to say majority, but you know, we're definitely silent, and that's the part that has to change. Because as one person comes out, so do 10 more, and 10 more behind him, and that stuff snowballs. And I saw it when I started my Turning Point chapter. It's really an incredible thing. And one more thing I just want to mention is that, you know, for people who think it's so hard to get involved, it's really not. And I'm a living testament of that. I mean, I remember going to my very first Turning Point event just over a year ago, last July, and meeting with Steve Bannon. And Steve, I saw you were on War Room yesterday, which is incredible. You know, so for me, 1 year later to be here with you guys today is amazing. And it shows if you're really, you know, passionate about the movement and eager to get involved and ready to do the work, what your potential can be. I mean, just a year later, I'm now the student caucus chairman at the New York Young Republican Club. I have my own Turning Point chapter at my school. I'm a constituent liaison in the New York City Council. And now I've officially become a speaker and debater for Turning Point USA. So if you're passionate, please take stock of that. You know, learn from someone like Charlie Kirk, who encouraged being bold and letting your opinions be heard. Don't let these people on the left, especially in these universities, shame you into silence, because if anyone should be shamed about their views, it's them. So take stock of your beliefs and get involved, because I promise you, it has a lot more of an impact than you could ever know.
So Manhattan YRs has 2,000 members.
Yeah.
There is YRs all around the country with smaller groups. How do people reach out to you? There's a lot of young people that are sending messages in here that are listening today that may want to get in touch with you and ask you how they do what you're doing. How do they get in touch with you?
Well, so, I mean, there's plenty of ways to get in touch with the New York Young Republican Club as a whole. We have a website, which, if I'm not mistaken, is NYYRC.com, stands for New York Young Republican Club. And there you can find out information about any events we have going on, different membership opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. Additionally, we're very active on all social media platforms. And if you want to reach out to me directly, you can do so through email, in which case my email is student@nyyrc.com. Again, that's student@nyyrc.com. If you have any questions for me personally, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have and do my part in getting you involved. I mean, it's really so important. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that, hence the membership, the growth in membership we've had. You know, reaching 2,000 members is quite incredible. And you really wouldn't think that there is such a strong Republican base in New York City, but quite frankly, there is. And I think a lot of people are beginning to be more and more fed up as things progress in the direction they've been.
Thank you very much, Michael. And we appreciate Mario Nicoletto for introducing us. And the more young Republicans, we'll try to get somebody on every time we have it to get your group out there, because it's so important. Again, thanks very much for coming on. And our next guest is Tina Horlicker. She was on last time and we had a problem. She's from Utah. So Tina, come on down.
Hi, Steve. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate today. I'm just going to share a little bit about what is going on in Utah and how people can get involved and how candidates can access the ballot. Utah has a system called the caucus and convention system that really has functioned since the early 1900s. And the way that works is we're divided, the whole entire state of Utah is divided into precincts. Prior to conventions, we have a day where we go to caucuses and we elect our delegates. And then from there, we begin to educate ourselves on the candidates. And then we go to convention, the nominating convention, and the delegates are able to get up front and personal with the candidates. And then they nominate the candidates that are going to go on to the general ballot. If there's anything less than a 60-40, then they would go to a primary and then onto the general ballot. But unfortunately, in 2014, when Bob Bennett, who was a senator for the state of Utah, went to the nominating convention and he was ousted by the delegates. He was a longstanding senator. He was ousted by the delegates, and the delegates elected Mike Lee, who is still currently a senator for the state of Utah. And so in response to that, the establishment of Utah created a system by subterfuge, of course, called SB 54, Senate Bill 54, that created another path to access the ballot. So a candidate, rather than going through the caucus and convention system, could go gather signatures to be able to get on the ballot at the primary. So with this system in place, it becomes all about money. Who has the most money, because they actually will start campaigning way before caucus is even held. And so they know they're getting to the ballot because they're gathering their signatures. They have to pay the signature gatherers, which creates an opportunity of fraud. And there absolutely has been fraud in signature gathering, because the signature gatherer is paid $15 per signature, and we have immense fraud. I'll get to that later. But that candidate, because they're going that path, and they're actually even allowed to go both paths, which is very hurtful to the caucus and convention system, because the delegates become disenfranchised because they make all the effort to get to know the candidate, and the candidates that would lose at convention, though they've gathered signatures, now force a primary on the convention winner. And unfortunately, a lot of those convention winners are more grassroots Republicans and don't have the finances to be able to run a campaign against a well-entrenched candidate who has all the money and access. So SB 54 has created havoc on the state of Utah in relation to getting the candidates that the delegates really choose all the way to the primary. And I'll give you a very current example of our governor, Spencer Cox, who at the last nominating convention, gubernatorial, where we were electing the gubernatorial candidate, he came out on the stage and the delegates booed him. They do not like him. They do not like his politics. They don't like the things that he's been involved with. And so they booed him. So on the stage, Spencer Cox, who had already served one term as governor, just laid into the delegates and told them it didn't really matter what they thought, that he would get elected anyway, that the caucus and convention system was not kind. Anyway, he just used all the arguments that correspond with the DEI narrative and went on to gather signatures, forced the primary, or he'd already gathered the signatures. So he forced the primary. There was no way to his opponent, who won outright at convention with, I think it was like 73% of the vote, challenged his signatures. They would not allow him to look at the signatures, and so much craziness that ensued. He won at the primary ballot, but of course we have mail-in ballots and we have voter rolls that are old and filled with dead people and all kinds of people that allow them to, lessen the integrity of our election. And so the next thing that happened was the candidate that won at convention did a path to write in his name at the general ballot. And that's quite a story to be told. If any podcasters are listening and you want to do a show on that, that's a great story to be told. The candidate, Phil Lyman, who ran against Spencer Cox, gathered more signatures at the general election than any candidate in history, but he apparently came up short. But it was a tremendous effort. I don't know if I quite believe he came up short, but that's kind of an example of how the caucus and convention system really has been infiltrated with people who say they're Republican but are not really Republican. And another example is our current Senator John Curtis, who is a former chair of the Utah Republican Party, or I'm sorry, he's a former chair of the Utah County Democratic Party, who became Republican and is now a senator who gathers signatures, lost at convention as well. So it's been a little bit disheartening for a lot of the grassroots who feel like that we can't overcome these challenges. But I actually have a win that I can tell you about. This last convention, we had the Senate President Stuart Adams, who super corrupt, known across the nation for his corruption, and he was up for re-election, and he made it to, so at convention the story is really long. I don't want to necessarily go into it, but he did not get what he needed to be able to go to the general. So there was a primary, and because we were organized in precincts, we have the ability, which really is what gives us the ability to overcome all of these things if we can just organize ourselves. I really liked the I can't remember her name, but the woman that talked about, you know, organizing, because that's so true. And we were successful in organizing a campaign against the Senate president, and he lost, and he was stunned that he lost, which says something. But we've got a new candidate in there. And another thing that I'll tell you that really discourages some Republicans is that the chair of the Republican Party, the state chair, Rob Axon, on the eve of the primary, sent out a text accusing the candidate against the Senate president of accepting George Soros funds, and in an effort to try to boost the votes going to Stuart Adams. But that's something we're going to have to address at the upcoming State Central Committee meeting. But I mean, when you have the chair of the Republican Party engaging in election fraud, essentially, or, you know, trying to influence an election where he's supposed to be neutral at that stage, that's a real challenge. So
1 minute. 1 minute.
okay, thank you. So, you know, the way that we can get involved here is you reach out to your local party, and you just come in and get involved. So this next upcoming convention, we're going to be electing the leadership for the parties, the counties and the state parties. And again, we're always looking for people who are willing to serve on the State Central Committee, county party leadership. But I want to also just say, you know, the good people will run for office, and a lot of times they get in there and they get swept up in the establishment way of thinking. And so it's really, really important that people who want to get involved understand the principles of freedom. And when you understand the proper role of government, the things that government should be involved with, things that government should not be involved with, it puts you on more solid footing to really follow the platform of the party. Because people get discouraged because the Republican Party, at least in the state of Utah, is not choosing policy that follows our platform. So it's really important that everybody understand the principles of freedom. And I want to actually name a book. The 5,000 Year Leap by Cleon Skousen is an excellent book to be able to memorize and learn those principles, to be able to apply them to how government really should function. And lastly, I just want to say, we cannot give up. I do not believe that we can give up. We have to continue to fight, because when good men and women do nothing, then evil prevails. And I also just want to do a shout out to Michael. I'm super amazed by him and his tenacity and efforts. I hope he can be multiplied by millions.
Thank you very much, Tina. Our next guest is Chance Stowell from Minnesota. Come on down.
Well, hello. Yeah, thanks. Good to be on again. I really just want to give you a status report of the chaos that's present in Minnesota, and to let you know that God is totally in control here. I've been a vice chairman of our local party, actually been involved in politics for more years than I care to admit. And I've never seen more people of faith actively involved in the Republican Party than is going on right now. As many of you are, we're involved in the election season right now. We went through a convention of the Republican Party where the at best dysfunctional leadership of the party essentially self-destructed. A very revealing time. It revealed the layers of the establishment that were trying to control what we in the Precinct Project want to be a bottom-up grassroots party. And it became very, very obvious that they would be replaced either shortly or at least by the next state central meeting later on. In the meantime, most of the Precinct Project people I work with, and I work throughout the state now, are involved heavily in the Lindell Phillips campaign. What the devil means for evil, God uses for good. And out of that convention, where Lindell did not get the nomination, he did get to team with Phil Parrish, who's a remarkable addition and person in his own right. Military intelligence officer, a farmer, a real man of God as is Mike. And all of our efforts right now are devoted to the upcoming August 11th primary election to really provide a landslide win for Mike and Phil, and then to reunify the Republican Party for a landslide win in the general election. It's not going to be easy, but we see more and more every day the forces of good are starting to conquer the forces of evil. And I start to use those terms because the clarity in Minnesota is very, very present. If you follow Minnesota at all, you know how truly bleak the state looks. But fear not, the Precinct Project people accumulated over the years have really started to organize and pay off. The problem has been a very, very dysfunctional leadership combined of different elements, the big donors, the corporate oligarchs, I guess it's the easiest way to say it, together with the incumbent politicians who want to use the Republican Party simply to guarantee their re-election. And that's being broken up now as we move into the primary. Let me just look at a couple of notes here. It really hasn't been just the Precinct Project. There have been a number of active groups here that whose contributions are really paying off. The Patriot Academy, with their wonderful courses in biblical citizenship and the Constitution and all. Certainly the War Room Posse is alive and well, and we encounter that daily in our work. A group was formed several years ago called Restore Minnesota. It's an education, non-political organization whose unbelievable objective is to restore God's righteousness to Minnesota, or actually restore Minnesota to God's righteousness. And we're finally getting churches active. And if we can't get the churches, we're getting their congregations active in politics again. I just report good news here. It looks right now, the current polls are Mike Lindell is leading going into the primary with Trump's endorsement. We look for something well above a 50% win there. And after that, it becomes a reunification process. The establishment in Minnesota, though, is very, very strong, even down to the local party level. A number of good people won the party endorsements in the convention at the state rep and state senator level. And the establishment has gone so far to violate their rules and actually nominate people to run against them to try and break up the morale. But it's not working. It's actually everything evil is being turned to good is the only way I can report it. If people are interested in joining the efforts here, just get in touch with me and I'll get you connected to where you can make the most difference just as quick as you can. I failed miserably in getting Steve a list of the local party chairs, but that's probably just as good because some of them are not to be trusted anymore in terms of being truly MAGA. But Minnesota, the way I want to wrap this up is you all know about the Miracle on Ice in terms of the hockey game. We're producing another one of those right now. It's in process. It's being led by people of God, people of faith, and we just need all the help we can get to really turn this into landslide victories. And in terms of activating all the precinct project strategies, let's wait until after the general election to fully implement that. I think we can begin doing that once we have new leadership of the party in place. But again, God uses it for good. The leadership of the party has been so obviously corrupt. It has actually turned people away from really wanting to participate at the local level with the parties. And we're in the process of changing all of that right now. That's pretty much what I wanted to say. Any questions or comments?
Yep, thanks a lot. We're running a little bit late, so we appreciate you doing that. Velma, you want to wrap this up? We got about a minute left before we get our next guest on. So wrap up the precinct project, precinct strategy. Remember, everybody, get Dan Schultz's book. Go to www.precinctstrategies.com. Dan Schultz is the founder of Precinct Strategy, helps us with the precinct project. Velma, we got about a minute. If you want to finish up, and we'll get our good friend Peter Tickton and Dr. Jerome Corsi on. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, thank you so much, Steve. I think the movement with Precinct Project USA has been really positive, and a lot of folks have been coming together to support each other. I think what we're seeing in the party, as Chan was saying, is that there are folks from the left who are leaving the Democrat Party because of the DSA and related takeovers, and they're moving into some of the Republican ranks. And then some of the folks, who are more MAGA, America First, are either being pushed out or they've been having trouble to begin with. So all we're trying to do, I think, with Precinct Project USA is at least keep everybody together, because God does have a plan, and there is something for you, whether it's working with a campaign or getting out the vote, or running for a precinct committee person, or participating in a civic organization, or with your county or state GOP or a local Republican committee. Wherever you feel comfortable, that's really what's important. So the last thing I'll just say is that the couple webinars that we've had and that we have going forward, July was really great with Project Civica. They provided an overview on the precinct committee strategy, and there's a video of that as well. For September, we have Andy Parchard and Andy Meehan are going to be leading on bylaws and parliamentarians with a professional parliamentarian. And we have more. So if anybody wants to also participate on a weekly basis, just a general chat with Dan Schultz, it's 9 p.m. on Tuesdays or Eastern, and 3 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays on X.
Thank you very much, Velma. You have done a phenomenal job, and that's really helping us. And you can watch the rest of the program on Stern American Rumble. Our next guest, Dr. Jerome Corsi, one of our special guests that comes on all the time, always brings us the latest information. He's fantastic. I love him. Thank you for coming on, Jerome.
Great pleasure, Steve. Thank you. I think the latest information is that President Trump's going to make one more effort to get the SAVE Act passed. I think John Thune does not have the votes, and I don't think he's going to get the votes. And one more effort will be made to get the Congress to stay in session through August to address the filibuster issue and to pass the SAVE Act. Now, President Trump, I think, is still solidly on the path of declaring a national national security emergency under his Article 2 powers. And the NEA, the act that was involved here to declare national emergency under INS versus Chadha, a case that decided that it will take 2/3 majority in both House and Senate to overturn a national security emergency in declaration of the president. This would have great powers to it. In fact, a lot of the states are still resisting scrubbing their databases of non-citizens. I think with the rise of the DSA within the ranks of the Democratic Party, there's an urgency to have an executive order of this nature, national security declaration, which they have these extraordinary powers to it. And President Trump, under Article 2, as Commander-in-Chief, has set the predicate by saying specifically that the Chinese and the Venezuelans have been documented as penetrating our computer systems. And there's been specific reference by President Trump and on the website, if you look at the documents, to getting into the voter registration databases, which is something we've been arguing on gods5stones.com, our 501c3, that Andrew Paquette's papers have found these algorithms are in the state Board of Election databases that present the opportunity to create millions of false records that yet get certifiable state voter IDs. That's the critical point. It's just not creating false records, but making sure they've got a legitimate state ID so they can be used in mail-in ballot schemes where the numbers of the false voter, non-existent, matches the number of the mail-in ballot that's printed out and run through the tabulating machines. The fraud is conducted within the computers. And President Trump has said that China has gotten a hold of something like 20 million voter records. That's an act of war. The use of the NEA to create a national security emergency declaration gives the president ample powers, including to use the military or National Guard if states refuse to comply. And he'll have the ability to say that we're going to do no non-citizens are going to vote, voter IDs, paper ballots, and mail-in ballots, this universal mail-in ballot, restrict it to more of an absentee system, and do hand counting in public view, to ending on election day without this extended counting. President Trump puts that in the National Security Emergency Declaration. He'll have the power to utilize the National Guard, the Department of Justice, even federal troops if he had to make sure the states comply. The Democratic Socialists of America are planning to win by stealing elections. The Democrats resist the SAVE Act because they want to steal elections, and they're planning to do it in the midterm. And the Rhino Republicans don't want to stop it because they too benefit from a corrupt system. And we're seeing that now amply displayed. We're going to have election integrity in 2026, or the last 2 years of President Trump's his presidency will be taken over by the Democrats simultaneously impeaching both President Trump and Vice President Vance, removing them from office, probably imprisoning them on some pretext or other. And then Hakeem Jeffries becomes president of the United States. And he's the next in succession. That's an outcome we cannot afford to have happen. Finally, I've written a book that's called Democrats, and I submitted it to my publisher, Post Hill Press, on yesterday, and we'll have it out before the election. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, Jerome, tell us what else is going on the side. I know you've been up in Mar-a-Lago with a lot of the attorneys, speaking to them, finding out what's going on. You know, people listen to our program for the last 5 years. You've been on many times. Peter's been on many times. John Goodman's been here many times, and we still see the same thing going on, illegal aliens voting. Many of the people who listen are texting, when is this going to change? So I understand what President Trump is going to do, but when do you think all this is going to happen? Because they just go round and round, you and I, and, we talk about this every week. And I know you've been up there speaking to the lawyers and everything. And what do you think is going to happen?
Well, Peter will also comment on this, I'm sure, but it's a timing issue. I think right now, President Trump's balancing dealing with Iran, and I think we'll be back to war with Iran pretty soon. But the Straits of Hormuz are opening and will have to be open to keep the price of oil down at election time, and I think that's a main concern. But again, we want to have a national emergency declaration closer to the election, because you don't want to have a lot of time for the Democrats to go to the courts to try to muddy up the situation by getting some kind of an action in the courts or even within Congress to try to overturn a national security emergency declaration. So President Trump's going to time it. The groups are working in the White House. There's a task force working on it. We're getting constant revelations of new data of election fraud. In my book, this Democrats book, I demonstrate fraud that was in the 2012 presidential election. Now the Democrats moved to utilize fraud as a technique to win elections. It was just too hard to do the computer systems Obama did, too expensive for the get out the vote they did in 2008. So by 2012, they were into stealing the election. And right now, I think half the Democrats that are going to be running for election, especially the DSA, will lose if we have fair elections.
Thank you very much, Dr. Corsi. We appreciate you coming on and give us the time. Hope to have you on soon. Our
Thank
next
you.
guest, that famous guy, he is always has time for us. We love him. He's instrumental in getting Tina out of jail. We've had many programs. He was on our program. Maybe Peter will give us some update. I was in Europe for about 3 weeks. I haven't heard a lot what's going on. So Peter, come on down.
Steve, it's a pleasure to be here. How are you doing?
We're doing great. And, just getting over my wife got sick. She gave me a cold and woke me up at 4 o'clock this morning and said, I can't sleep. So I got very little sleep last night, but I'm here like you, we go through all these things and, it's great being here and everything is running on time. So Peter, give us some updates on what's going on with Tina and with President Trump. You were up at the White House. I'm hoping one day to get to the Oval. So
I'll tell you something. I've been in a lot of beautiful offices over the course of my life and my career as an attorney. I've been with the president a good number of times, but yet being in the Oval Office, I promise you, when you get there, it's something different than anything you've experienced before. There's just something to it that you can't even define, that just makes that room, and just being in that place in front of a desk that president after president has sat at. It's just a wonderful thing, and I thank Tina for letting me tag along with her. That was really about Tina Peters. It wasn't about Peter Tickton this time. And so, and I got to tell you, I am so thrilled that Tina's out of prison. But it's more than that. That's the fact that she's not in there anymore that's thrilling me. What's thrilling me is what she's able to do. I've always told people that she's a very bright woman, and now she's put together a plan where it needs to be followed. And so she and I are going to be seeing people in the White House to kind of push the plan, but there's no time. It has to be done very quickly. There's no way that we're going to get rid of the machines between now and November 3rd. And according to her plan, we don't need to. Because the machines can count the votes just as long as there's a good inventory done of all of the ballots, so that they're all continuously available. And then as soon as a ballot is counted, it basically can go into being recounted by, it could be by partisans. It doesn't have to be employees of the government. It could be by a number of different people or agencies, but it needs to be recounted by hand. And that won't delay the count by the machines, but it will correct the account by the machines as long as this is done before certification of the vote. So I think her plan is a great one. I think it's the only solution because we're running out of time. I mean, we're down to what, 96 days at this point?
I think less.
But well, what Jerome Corsi was talking about is really important because it's the nightmare scenario. And to explain it a little bit better, assuming, and I know for sure that it's true because I'm involved in these cases involving the voting machines. So, I'm not just guessing or heard somebody say. I can tell you that these voting machines are able to determine the outcome of the elections. And I don't think that there's any question that the let's call them the globalists, they are determined to get things done. They have a deadline of 2030 to get done with whatever evil and mischievous things. You know what? I take that back. It's not mischievous. It's just evil things that they're planning on doing. They want to destroy our country, and that's clear because they tried to do it. And over the 4 years that Biden was the figurehead, And look at what they did. I mean, they opened up the borders as though that's something good for us. You know, they increased weaponization to a point we've never seen before. That's why we need so many pardons to get these things reversed. But assuming that the machines can do what the machines can do, which is determine the outcome of any race, we have 22 Republican senators that are up for re-election this time around. And the machines can flip it. And there can be a great pretext that whatever they want to do, they want to bring Antifa in this time to start more riots just before the election, or release a virus before the election, or whatever it is that they do so that everybody sees that there's a reason that people would change their minds and vote for the left. They can switch those seats. They would be in a position to have 67 seats that would be able to remove in the Senate. They'd be able to remove anyone that was impeached by the House. So what happens 62 days after the day after the election? You know, that 62 days is going to go by fast. Why does it go by so fast? And nothing can get done during that period of time. It's because it includes Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. It's that time of year, number one. And number two, there's no time to think. What if we do this? What if we do that? I mean, the benefit we have is that President Trump knows how fast this time goes because he went through it in 2021. Those 62 days are going to go really fast after the election. And if they do that, what's going to happen on the first day of, you know, on January 5th, they get sworn in and they take their seats and then they start business. First order of business in the House is to elect the speaker. And we know that's going to be Hakeem Jeffries, just like Jerome Corsi said. So he would be the speaker. And what's the next order of business? And everybody thinks they're going to impeach Donald Trump. And they think that that's nothing because when he got impeached before, it was nothing. But it's not nothing if they have the ability to remove in the Senate. And they're not going to just impeach Donald Trump. That's not their plan. Their plan is to remove both Donald Trump and J.D. Vance at the same time for the same crime. And what kind of crime are we talking about? Because these men don't commit crimes. So what are they going to accuse them of? It doesn't matter. They got the votes. But they've accused them of murder. They've accused them of being responsible for the death of Renee Good. They've accused them of war crimes. Who knows what they're going to allege? It doesn't matter. If they have the votes to impeach, they'll impeach. If they have the votes to remove, they'll remove. But if they're able to remove Donald Trump and J.D. Vance at the same time, who then is the president of the United States? Hakeem Jeffries. The Speaker of the House is the next in line. So we'll have lost not just the House and the Senate, but also the presidency if the machines are allowed to do what they can do. And if you're thinking maybe they don't have the guts to do that, well, they had the guts in 2020, and it was so obvious to anybody watching that the election had been stolen. That's why all those people went to Washington to protest on January 6th. So I think that, I think that, Tina Peters' plan is a great one. I think that if Tina Peters' plan is put into place, then we can possibly have a fair election. If we have a fair election, we will win. Because the silent majority is a vast majority. And the loud minority is a small minority. They're just very loud. And if it weren't for cheating, they would have nothing. So, this is where we stand. This is where we go. And hopefully we'll get that plan through and get it done.
I would say hello to Tina for me if I don't get a hold of her. in the next couple of days. We'll see you soon. Thanks again. Our next guest coming up, Kat, will be Kim Coleman from Utah. Come on down, Kim.
I'm here with
A
you.
little louder.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, turn up your volume a little bit.
All right. Okay. All right. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Awesome. Okay. Do you want to lead?
No, Kim, just tell us about what's going
Okay.
on.
All right.
Well,
Perfect. It's great to be with you. You come into my living room frequent mornings on the war room, so I feel like you're one of my political celebrities. So it's great to be with you. I'm Kim Coleman, and I have been involved in the Election Integrity Network for, gosh, probably since it started in what, about 2021. And after an experience of a bunch of Utahns went to Nevada to witness firsthand some real problems that were happening in Clark County with election integrity. And we collected thousands of affidavits of people door after door that were recorded on the official record as having voted by mail, but person after person saying, I don't vote by mail. That wasn't me. That person doesn't live here. That person's not alive. That person used to live here, but hasn't been back to the state for years. I know because it's my brother, whatever. We just heard story after story, collected affidavit after affidavit. And these questionable numbers of affidavits of the experience. That's when I kind of really dove into to paying attention what's going on with our elections. So I love the Election Integrity Network, of course, led by Cleta Mitchell. And we've finally, I guess, figured out how to make these state chapters and state affiliations. So we did that here in Utah about 4 months ago, and we're meeting regularly, and we're growing, and we're looking at our Utah laws that are very problematic. So some of us led an effort last year in the legislative session when we realized or had information that our voter rolls were not so public, and we ran that up the chain. Our friends at Judicial Watch stepped in and wrote some strongly worded letters to our legislature and our Secretary of State, who is our Lieutenant Governor, that these laws were very problematic. We had counties that had as much as 65% of the public voter roll was redacted. So if you were to want to scrub that list, if you were active in your precinct and you wanted to, be that ground level, closest to the people level of precinct work and looking at your voter roll for your precinct, you got big blacked out lines in the voter file, upwards of 65%. So that's very, very, very problematic. And Justice has become aware of that and has also asked for voter rolls and has initiated actions. So Utah has a lot of problems. We check the boxes of a lot of the vulnerabilities that have been identified through the network, the things that we talk about frequently, Steve, that you talk about and your other guests talk about. We have universal vote by mail. Everybody gets mailed a ballot, whether they want one or not. We're starting to shift that where people can opt out, but it's an opt out instead of an opt in. Like I said, we have a wholesale ability for a person to just decide they don't want their record, their voter file to be public, and can just choose for no reason to not be or to have their record private. And that just system that can be vulnerable to illegals registering to vote. We do have a review, not an audit, and I want to be very clear on that. Our Election Integrity Network has urged the legislature to have an audit where our Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State conducted a review, found 27 illegal aliens were registered to vote. A handful of those actually did. But at the same time saying there are no vulnerabilities, there's nothing to see here. Well, 27 people kind of figure out how to do that, or it happens intentionally or unintentionally, we have a problem. So we have our issues in Utah, and we have definitely more than our fair share of election vulnerabilities, and a lot of resistance, more so in our state Senate than our House, to lock some of these things down, to get control over, have different systems for dropping off ballots. And our Election Integrity Network, we would love to see a one-day election again and some paper balloting and counted at precinct level. So kind of all the model policies that we all talk about in the network, we're working to try to achieve that. So maybe I'll catch my breath, and I'd love to share with you also. I wear another hat serving on the RNC, and I would love to give an update on some of those things that are very positive. Okay. I'll just keep going. Okay, so kind of switching gears. Let me share with you what's going on the RNC. I've been serving on the RNC for about 2 years, and I ran for that absolutely with election integrity as the top of mind and my number one reason to go to the RNC. And they had not done much for us lately, so was not crazy about the Republican National Committee structure, leadership. But I came in as things were really starting to change a little bit under Chairman Whatley, and now with Chairman Joe Gritters and co-chair Casey Crosby, Laura Trump before her. And they had finally started waking up to, we have a problem. And so put together an election integrity committee. I really, really wanted to be put on that. And so I do serve on that. There are some things that we have done there that are extraordinary in the history of the RNC. And part of it is millions of dollars invested in shoring up elections, especially on the procedural side. If we deployed 6,000 attorneys, and we recognized, as I was coming in, that a lot of our election integrity issues are being handled in the courtroom. So we absolutely need people in polling places. We need people reviewing our voter files. We need people engaged at every place election activity happens. But then what? So if you see something that looks funny at a polling place, you see something that looks funny when you're poll watching, you see anything that's happening procedurally that looks funny, we have had 6,000 lawyers ready to go. Frequently, we're filing by the end of the day. We've got attorneys in a courtroom by the end of the day. And we were able to really stop a lot of bad things. In our last election cycle, I personally and our election integrity committee has been very, very committed to making sure those resources are still there. The lawyers are still ready to go. And we've employed, almost 200 of additional kind of more regular full-time lawyers. And that's an unfortunate thing that's where we have to be, but that's where we have to be. And so that is one good thing the RNC is doing and putting resources toward election integrity efforts. They're admitting it, at least.
1 minute, Kim.
This
1
is
minute.
where we need to be. You bet. So a lot of good things happening at the RNC level. The grassroots conservatives don't dominate yet. We're working on that. Hopefully, you know, every cycle of new RNC members, we bring in more good, solid conservative grassroots conservatives. So a lot of interesting things happening in Utah. Anybody that's from our state, there are a number of ways to get involved. You know, again, with Precinct Project USA, the RNC is also looking for volunteers, and the Election Integrity Network all looking for volunteers. So we are going to swarm all of our elections and make sure that that people who are eligible, lawfully allowed to vote do, and those who can't don't. So, and Secretary of State, who's very resistant to, you know, she keeps saying that everything's perfect in Utah, all is well in Utah. Well, it's not.
Okay, thank you very much. We're running a little late. So our next guest is Harry Hari. Hopefully his leg is better. He was down with us in Florida at Trump International. So hope you're doing good.
I'm doing much better, Steve. Thanks for having me on. But, you know, the fact of the matter is I broke my leg, so I don't like those, you know, kind of performative congratulations or statements of encouragement, like you're saying break a leg, because I did that already. So anyway, I'm doing quite a lot better. Thank you. So, you know, Unite for Freedom, our organization has been devoted to extensive data analytics with regard to the voter rolls, voter histories. We've been in a number of Help America Vote Act complaints. We have, you know, been trying to fight our way through to finding the magic key to getting some people to actually listen to extensive information regarding problems with our voting system. They really exist everywhere. They're worse in some places than others, and they also pretty much permeate the election workflow. It's good to hear the previous speaker's discussion of trying to improve the process, but there's dozens and dozens of problems with chain of custody, provenance in general, with regard to ballots. You know, we really don't know for sure who the voters are. Some states are actively interfering with us knowing who the voters are. The voter registrations have all sorts of anomalies in them that violate the state laws as to what a legal registration should look like. Some of them are certainly just common clerical errors, but at the same time, we have dozens and dozens of examples of types of anomalies and millions of examples of those anomalies, ranging from voter registration errors, voter registration problems, all the way down to obvious lapses in provenance with regard to the data, the inability of the states and the counties to reconcile the votes. We don't care if you're talking about 2020 or 2022 or 2024. The analysis shows a pattern of incompetence that's beyond belief. So is the incompetence actually malice? That's for, you know, the courts to decide in the end. But the fact of the matter is, it's, you know, anybody as an actual practitioner of data science or cybersecurity or operational security concepts would decry this level of incompetence that we see everywhere as being proof that nobody seems to even care. We call it, you know, MIA. It's either malice, ignorance, or apathy, but it doesn't really matter in the end. The system is so inaccurate that they don't really know who has won. And so this causes a lot of problems. I mean, these issues exist in red states as well as blue states. The act of interference is much worse frankly, in the blue states, but you know, everywhere we look, including our state of Missouri, which is a deep red state, we have bureaucrats that are refusing to make the data that's supposed to be transparent and public available to the citizens. We have people that have been ordered to provide data in Missouri and in Pennsylvania that simply refuse. They won't give us the data. We have people that have tried to FOIA the information in California and New York, and they do not provide the data. They refuse. We have examples of this in Illinois and in Texas. We get summary dismissals of legally obligated actions. A HAVA complaint is supposed to not just be something that they wave their hands magically in the air and say, go away. There's nothing to see here. That's not a finding. That's not a hearing. That's not actually a judgment or a review of what's happened. And they provide no explanation at all. They say things simply to the judge like, well, we looked at the data and we don't see anything. And, you know, we're just going to dismiss these charges because they're baseless. Well, where does the concept of, you know, jurisprudence and due diligence and anything else? And remember, I've got people, hundreds of them, that are data analysts and data scientists and engineers and cybersecurity experts that say there is a problem. And you have election officials, and I'm not saying that election officials are bad, so don't throw eggs at me yet out there in the audience or rotten tomatoes. But the fact of the matter is that they have less experience and knowledge about these things than I do and my people do. We have a team that's led by a guy from Illinois, Ken Zitko. He's a wonderful data analyst. He's been in the business for over 30 years. And I've been in the cybersecurity business for over 35 years. The country, the US government, trusted me to design the continuity of communication systems for the United States. My software and my designs are incorporated into White House systems, into FEMA systems, into national defense systems, into the defense, messaging system, a very old system that's still being used. But the fact of the matter is that they look at us like we don't know what we're talking about. We can see the problems right in the data, millions of problems, and they refuse to do anything about it. So we continue to fight. We continue to look for those magic bullets that exist in the law. I think you'll be seeing over the next week or two some interesting filings by Unite for Freedom. I don't want to spoil the surprise for everybody, but we have a number of things that we're doing that are, we hope, are going to make a huge difference. And obviously we have to say hope, because we have judges across the country doing things that are unfathomable in terms of making sure that the civil rights of the U.S. citizens to have fair, open, and honest elections and transparent ones are preserved. I mean, we always go back to the same principle. We need to know who the voters are. We need to know that when they cast a ballot, it's a real ballot, and that ballot gets to the ballot tabulation process, whatever that is, to count the ballot, and that count is accurate. And then there has to be some transparency associated with the ability to audit those. I talk a lot about this. My friend Joe Hoff talks a lot about it, but auditability is required under the law. The DOJ guidance on prosecution of election crimes clearly states that the system has to be auditable, but none of these systems provide data that's auditable. We get some sort of nonsense out of the secretaries of state sometime that we asked the wrong questions in our FOIA requests. It's ludicrous. They're interfering with the data discovery on purpose. They don't want people to look at the actual data. And the fact of the matter is, if you accept the decades-long DOJ guidance on election fraud and election law, the transparency and the preservation of records is guaranteed by law, by practice, by history, by covenant with the citizens of the United States that we call the U.S. Constitution, and they ignore it right and left. The problem, part of it, is that it's an extraordinarily complicated issue, and bureaucrats are taking on themselves authority that they don't have. HAVA complaints should not be being dismissed arbitrarily. They are. We have dismissal without even a hearing in New York. We have a dismissal in Missouri with a hearing and discovery, but still just an outright summary judgment that was not in alignment with the judge's orders or the history of the case. We have interference in Texas. We have interference in Colorado. We know that we're going to get a whole series of Help America Vote Act complaint dismissals here in the next coming weeks. But this also builds the case, which we are preparing litigation over this specific issue as to what it means under HAVA, what it means under other election law to have honest, true, and provable or auditable elections. So our goal is to demonstrate through a very orderly and disciplined process how badly broken our elections are. And then we've already started asking the question in our Pennsylvania litigation, if the system is broken and the results are inauditable, that they can't prove that their decision was correct, they can't even demonstrate that the count was accurate, what exactly are they certifying?
Harry, 1 minute. 1 minute, Harry.
This
Yeah,
creates a dilemma for them, and this is the crucial dilemma. What is the obligation to certify? Does someone have to certify an accurate and honest election? Or are they able to overrule the will of the people and certify a broken election? And let's just call them errors with millions of errors embedded. Is this okay? That actually puts the hands of the future of the country, not in millions of people's hands, but in 50. So this is what we're fighting. You can find us at unite4freedom.com. And we need your help. We always need more analysts. We could use some legal help around the edges, particularly paralegals. And obviously, we can always use donations. Thank you for having me, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Harry. We'll get you on again, give you some more time. Let's
Great.
bring Linda Sinkowitz on here 2 minutes. She's our co-host. We're going to have Greg Stenstrom on. Linda, how's your husband? I know he was in a little operation.
And yeah, he just had a full shoulder replacement. So right now he's over in his recliner resting. So he's
All right,
doing great. Thank you.
We'll get you on in a little while. Let's get Greg Stenstrom on. He's next. You're up, Greg.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
I had my microphone turned off. This is my first StreamYard link. We've been previously using Zoom. I use StreamYard myself, so this is an awesome upgrade. Thanks, Steve. Linda, it's good to see you.
You too.
A lot going on. Harry, I just was watching Harry's review. I'm a co-plaintiff in that case with Unite for Freedom, along with 5 other co-plaintiffs. Rob Mancini, John Child, Scott Thomas, and Karis Coker. And what's interesting about that case is we've been learning for the last 6 years. I know there's people on here that wonder, why we do litigation as opposed to, I don't know, bark at the moon. But with litigation, we've been learning over the last 6 years that litigation isn't just about winning. People are saying, well, you got to win a lawsuit. We're waiting for a judge to have this moment of clarity and say, oh, gee, we got it all wrong for the last 6 years. And frankly, that's not going to happen. And it was never going to happen. But litigation isn't about, quote unquote, winning a case. Litigation, as in all strategy, is getting what you want. And what I want to thank everybody here, and everybody here. I don't know anyone here who, I'm just looking at the list. I don't know anyone here who hasn't been involved in a lawsuit of some sort in litigation for election integrity over the last 6 years. And it's been a learning process. But President Trump coming out a couple of weeks ago now, coming out on TV, giving a speech that was opposed by, the left stream media, and coming out with evidence that he put on the whitehouse.gov site and said, look, we know you've been stealing elections. We've had the evidence for since 2020, or actually before. But at this point, for anyone in the country, Democrat, Republican, Independent, left or right, to say that there's not massive election fraud is flying in the face of the evidence. We know that they've been stealing elections. The evidence is overwhelming, and there's more that's going to be coming from President Trump. He's going to release more over the next few weeks. There's more coming. They've been committing massive election fraud. More importantly, we know who they are. This isn't some nameless cabal. I'm not going to go into on this show right now, like the who's, but we know who's doing it, why they're doing it, how they're doing it. And I can say this, I believe President Trump has a plan. I think he's the most informed person on the planet. I think he's well aware of everything's going on. I regularly hear, like, we got to get to the president, or the president doesn't know this, or the president doesn't know that. I think President Trump knows exactly what's going on, and that there's a plan in place to proceed. And part of what we've been doing is this litigation has been providing the evidence and the tools and the pressure required so that we can get a fair election in November. In the Unite for Freedom case, it's a unique case because most of the cases in the country have been defeated because they're working out of a silo, they're working on one statute. So you heard Harry before me talking about the National Voter Registration Act, NVRA, the motor voter law, and HAVA, and 52 USC 2701, and a lot of these terms and statutes, I think, go over, unless you're involved, right over people's heads. But what they've been doing is they've been picking us apart, because they pick us off individually in different states, and they pick off individual parts of the code. Okay, they pick these off, and they've been defeating us by taking one little clause. So you don't have standing under this clause in HAVA. You don't have jurisdiction or right to private action in NVRA. They've been picking us off. So what changed in the case, and what we've learned from, and I think it's made it very difficult for them, is the Congress, the intent of Congress was never to supersede. 52 USC goes way back, goes back decades. And then they had the National Voter Registration Act in 1993 under Clinton. And then they had HAVA, actually it was 2002, but I think most people listed as 2008, but 2002, and they've had multiple laws since. The latest being, let's do the Save America Act. There's nothing wrong with our election laws. By previous election laws, they were never allowed to do mail-in ballots in the manner that they're doing them now. They just ignored the law. But what we did that's unique in this one case, and it's being replicated across the country, in the Unite for Freedom, Stenstrom, Mancini, Child, Thomas, and Karras case in particular, Congress never intended these acts to supersede each other. They never intended the National Voter Registration Act to supersede the election law. They never intended for HAVA to supersede the law. What we're saying now is it's one integrated set of laws. Okay, it's been growing, and we've been adding to the election code, and how we treat our elections for decades. So this has really got them befuddled right now, because they can't beat in the courts. They can't beat an integrated intent of Congress. The intent of Congress was to allow the people the means through a couple of different ways: 28 USC 1331, the 42 USC 1983, which most people are familiar with in the federal courts. But what the Congress's intent was is that citizens, candidates, authorized representatives, poll workers, concerned citizens, electors, that we could force, government officials to comply with law. So I think that's a big change. And rather than, go over each individual case that we've got, I wanted to say that I think we're in a very good position now, where I'm working with Andy Thompson out in Arizona. I'm working with some people from Oregon right now. I've been working with people in Illinois, California, Connecticut, Florida, working with people. Some of the people here are on the show. Been working extensively with people here in Pennsylvania to assert their rights in the courts. And what I see us doing right now, and I encourage people to, watch their elections as they're coming up here, watch, how they're preparing for elections and get involved and understand what's going on. And I think if we litigate, which is pretty much what we can do peacefully, if we litigate peacefully, then what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to provide President Trump, the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security, we'll be able to provide them with the tools that they need to enforce and indict. Secretary Mullen came out with a pretty forceful letter or directive to state governors who weren't complying with law. And he says, look, if you don't comply with federal election law, we're going to cut off your budget. And not only that, we're going to come in and we're going to investigate. That has teeth. The litigation we have right now has teeth. So what we've asked for in this litigation is an interpretation from the courts to say what the law is and what the law isn't, okay? And to force these officials to do what they're supposed to do. So let me move on. Steve, how much time do I have? I'm trying to watch.
You got 2 minutes.
2 minutes is enough. So usually I come on and I give, different cases and what we're doing, but I wanted to say that for the people who are here wondering what to do, and this group of people specifically, this is a battle of 1% versus 1%. This is not right now a battle of the public. I would say the public. I think the public, the public per se, is really hoping and counting on a very small percentage, this 1%, most of who are on this call right now, to move forward, to act, to exert personal agency in acting and watching over our elections. I'm going to give you, I only have 2 minutes. So one of the most important pieces.
1 minute, Greg.
One of the most important pieces of litigation right now is we're in the courts right now. There's not a single election machine in the country that's certified to run an election, and certainly not in Pennsylvania. And they're going to be deciding that within the next couple of weeks. And what I would ask is for people, most people here know me. You can find me on www.patriot.online and Greg Stenstrom. I'm easy to find. There's a donate button there. We could certainly use your help. I've got 2 books out, Parallel Election, which is available on Amazon. Most of you know about, but I have a new book called I Stand on My Briefs, Pro Se Legal Warfare, also found on Amazon, that will take you through how to act in the courts. And I think these meetings, Steve, I can't thank you enough. And Linda, I can't thank you enough for your advocacy and getting us out, getting this out to people, because what I'm seeing now is the people here are making a difference. And I thank you, Steve, for your time. And I hope that was helpful from the perspective of what's changed in terms of litigation, and the battleground has changed with President Trump coming out and actively asserting his executive authority to come back into our support. So thank you very much, Steve.
You got it. Very important. Thanks very much, Greg. We appreciate you coming on.
Thanks.
Our next speaker will be John Droz. We get emails from him all the time, so now we got him live in person. So come on down, John.
Thank you, Steve.
You're quite welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, John.
Hi. For those viewers who have not had the privilege of meeting, I'm a North Carolina scientist, a physicist, who has been involved with several national issues. These include climate change, energy matters, COVID, K-12 education, election integrity, etc. In each case, what I've been trying to do is to inform the public about what the science really says, as in all of these matters, what has been pushed by the mainstream media is political science, not real science. To make this happen, I give talks like today and provide other services, all for free. So, for example, one of my services is that I weekly write about all these issues on my Substack column. For those who would like to check it out, the title of my Substack is Critically Thinking About Select Societal Issues. The link is criticallythinking.substack.com. And by the way,
Unlike some of the other popular Substacks, mine is for free. Regarding election integrity, I've been heavily involved with this issue since 2020, I would say. For example, I put together a team of experts and we published 10 major reports. You can find them all on election-integrity.info. Got that? Election-integrity.info. My email is near the bottom of the page if you'd like to contact me. Today, I'd like to spend a few minutes to give you a perspective on election integrity that I doubt you've heard before. Furthermore, in my humble opinion, I'm Joe, as a fairly knowledgeable person in this field, I think that this is by far the most significant election-related issue we are facing. Although it has escaped almost everyone's attention, I noticed it as it combines two areas that I'm heavily invested in, K-12 education and election integrity. So we need to start with K-12 education system to understand the immense threat we're facing. So here goes. I'm amazed by how many people complain about how deplorable our K-12 system is, and it is, but at the same time, how few citizens are really doing anything that will meaningfully fix it. As I said, I'm a physicist, so I'm used to tackling complex problems, and this is certainly one. In my professional experience, the key to solving complicated matters is to simplify things. So let's start with something simple here. Do you realize that we have no national agreement as to what the objective of our K-12 education system should be? Instead, we have 50 different mission statements. This is absurd and is a guaranteed recipe for failure, which is what we have. Another step in the simplification process is to write down all the major issues facing our K-12 education system. I haven't seen this from a credible source, but I've identified 12. These are also on my Substack. After a good list has been published, the next simple step would be to prioritize its items. They're not all of equal importance. Which is the most important? I haven't seen that done either. The outcome of that is we have diluted time, diluted money, and diluted effort randomly distributed over a dozen or so major K-12 issues. Not prioritizing these problems is a major mistake. Based on my extensive experience, I have identified corrupted curricula as the #1 issue facing the U.S. K-12 education system. Briefly, there are 3 reasons why this has happened. #1, our K-12 education system is specifically designed to teach children what to think. The anti-Americans on the left know this, so they have taken over and corrupted the what part of almost every subject, the curriculum, especially science and history. #2, conservatives have allowed this to happen. For instance, in my field, the progressives who wrote the science standards, called NGSS, had the audacity to scrap the traditional scientific method. Where are the conservative organizations strenuously objecting to this? #3, a major reason why our opponents are succeeding is that many people on the left are playing the long game. They have no problem getting involved with a project that might take 30 years to come to fruition. Almost no conservatives think in such terms, so they are oblivious when it is being done against them, which is what's happening in K-12 education. We've allowed corrupted curricula to fester now for decades, so to fix that would take many years. However, there is a creative solution that can be implemented next year. The simple fix for this is to get at least one state to switch to teaching students how to think, not what to think, how to think. Instead of fixing the curricula, this gives students tools to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff. In other words, a durable skill to recognize and reject when they're being fed propaganda. Is there a simple solution to making this happen? Yes. Mandate a 1-year high school class that formally teaches students how to be a critical thinker. No one in the country, no state in the country is doing anything remotely like that. That sounds good, but it is missing one fundamental part that no one had ever provided. What's called standards for such a class. That's how this bureaucracy works. Everything starts with standards. A few months ago, I put together a team that produced the first ever standards for teaching a 1-year course in critical thinking. We are now approaching a select few states to get the ball rolling. Lastly, what does this have to do with elections? Well, why is this a major national threat? Looking at the big picture, some 4 million students graduate from U.S. high schools every year. The objective of the left is to maximize the number of graduates who are not only thoroughly propagandized with Marxist ideology, but also have their innate critical thinking ability squelched. That is bad enough, but here's the kicker. What happens soon is that something like 3 million of these indoctrinated, non-thinking citizens sign up to be voters every year. Do the math. To see this in the flesh, just look at who has won recent elections. Almost all this is attributable to what's going on right under our noses in K through 12, yet almost no one is making this pivotal connection. So that's the brief story of Americans, that how Americans' enemies are currently, carefully, slowly, and methodically corrupting the next generation of our citizens. They wouldn't have they won't have to fire a shot to take America down, as they are instead ensuring that we will self-destruct. It's no joke, as this is well underway right now. Although we are already behind the 8 ball, we can still fix this by getting critical thinking formally taught in K through 12 schools. I am open to helping others to work in their state. If they have any questions, send me an email. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That was wonderful.
Do they have your email, John?
Email is aapirjohn@northnet.org.
Thank you very much, John, for taking the time. Our next guest is Ian Trier. Thank you for everything you do, Ian, and come on down.
Awesome to see that book, Linda. Great. I hope that's autographed. I'm sure it is. Look, Linda's got a copy of my most recent book, my first book, No More Lies. Trine Day has not hit the presses, but that was my first book. High Stakes Treason is my second. It's Bombardier Books, imprint of Post Hill Press. And Linda and I got a chance to meet each other at a 107 event last month, where I thought we connected very nicely. Before that, Linda had been very staunch supporter of my work. And going back to this most recent guest, Steve, there's a book that I recommend by Charlotte Iserbyt, who passed away a few years ago in her 90s. She was fired by the Reagan administration because of her opposition to a program called Betterment in Education Through Science and Technology, the BEST. She published a book that over 900 pages called The Deliberate Dumbing Down of Americans. That was published in the mid-90s. So to kind of coattail off of what your most recent guest was talking about in regards to the hijacking of our public education, the Department of Education, of course, created under the President Carter administration. I would exhort people listening and investigating to read Charlotte's book. She's a former guest of my podcast, Discussions of Truth. Let me get into a little bit of High Stakes Treason. As I mentioned, I was with Juan. I presented at his event 40 minutes ago with Linda. You can get a copy of that book right now. Send me a Venmo, $35, and I'll get you out an autographed copy. Or if you don't want the autograph, just go to Amazon and order it. If you want to listen to it, audiobook, that's Amazon as well. I think it's $9 for audiobook, $21 for the copy, $35 if you want an autograph. I pay the shipping. Pretty easy. Venmo, 415-577-6910 is my phone number. What we're looking at here with High Stakes Treason is the result of something that was very difficult to get published. In 2024, I was approached by a former FBI agent. His name is John Donovan. I disclose his name in the introduction. And by the way, you may have seen that copy that Linda was holding up. Roger Stone has written one of the forwards. There are 3 forwards in that book. Roger got his name on the cover because of his notoriety and his contributions to the Constitutional Republic over the past century, a half century. But John Kiriakou is also another person that wrote a forward. If you haven't caught John's work, Google his name, Kiriakou, something of that nature. I believe that's about it. Kiriakou's been on Jesse Waters, Sean Hannity. He's a former CIA agent, and he's very much opposed to John Brennan and Barack Obama. And the third forward in this book was written by a guy named Brooks Agnew, former speechwriter, amongst many other things, for Alan Keyes. So those are the 3 forwards you get in the book. And of course, John Donovan, the person that gave me his binder, white binder of information and research regarding John Brennan, the former director of the CIA under Barack Obama. This individual, as I lay out in High Stakes Treason, has committed very heinous financial crimes and also intelligence crimes. And I'll use the word allegedly. John doesn't like me using that word because John is accusing him, but he's not a lawyer, nor am I. And so I use the word alleged crimes. There are well over 25 alleged felonies that Mr. Brennan should be facing and charged with immediately. If anyone listening can get to Jason Quinones, I ask you to reach out to Jason Quinones. He's the U.S. attorney in South Florida overseeing the subpoenas that were handed down under the Pam Bondi DOJ by way of Jim Jordan's request. Also, Joseph DeGeneva is helping. He's been put on that case recently. And he's another person that should be using this information and reading this information. A couple of dates to give you folks. If anyone is in California, you can go to the Marin County GOP. You can hear me speak this month, August 27th. I'll be speaking on this book. I'm bringing with me my good friend, the Google whistleblower, who worked for Google for about 8 years. His whistleblowing with Project Veritas exposed the crimes of Google being involved in voter fraud, machine learning fairness. Zach Voorhees will be with me August 27th in Marin County. If you're in Southern California, October 17th, I'll be at Rancho Bernardo speaking about my book. And very likely I'll be revisiting with Juan's event, the Storm Summit, which is coming up. I don't know if there's an exact date set yet. Perhaps there is. Linda can fill you in on that, but that is somewhere in September, mid-September. Is strong likelihood I'll be at that as well. I'll also be in Central California. I don't have a date yet for that, but that'll be October. I'll be at Harris Ranch in Central California. So Californians are reading this information. They're interested in this information, and they're digging into it. I'll get into a little bit of voter fraud and how John Brennan is involved in voter fraud, because I just did a podcast with Patrick Byrne a few days ago on Agent X11. She's a podcaster based out of LA. That was a wonderful podcast. And actually, Ralph Pizzulo, who I think will be joining you later in this segment with Steve, Ralph spoke to great length at that. So I'll get into a little bit of voter fraud in a minute, but let me get back to the information that was presented to me at the CPAC in 2024 that Linda had in her hands there, known as the book High Stakes Treason. This is a meticulously well documented book, research that was given to me that shows John Brennan created, and I'll just repeat here, over 25 alleged felony white-collar crimes, holding illegally stocks in an indispensable government contractor called the Analysis Corporation. This was created in 1990 to track the Mujahideen as the Soviets had pulled out of Afghanistan. The Analysis Corporation is what John Brennan was the president of before he got involved in the Obama administration. He's an avowed communist, as Roger states in his introduction. And according to John Guandolo, he is a convert to Islam. More importantly, Wahhabism, which is the most violent sect out of Saudi Arabia of Islam. This is jihad. This is what the former director of the CIA is allegedly a convert to, according to John Guandolo. John is very involved in Texas right now in the Sharia law, fighting Sharia law in that state. But that is my source for that claim. This individual, John Brennan, compromised American security for just shy of $5 million in these illegally held stocks in the Analysis Corporation, which means he allowed various terror activities to happen. One of the most important notoriety would be the Boston Marathon bombing, of which I know 2 people that were in Boston that day. They weren't harmed, fortunately, but they heard the blasts and they were very close to those Tsarnaev brother bombs that went off. What we know through Edward Snowden, but prior to Edward Snowden back in 2011, because of my FBI agent, what we know is that John Brennan had full awareness of this happening through the databases in the NSA and the Analysis Corporation, and he did not prevent this from happening so that his stock value would increase. And that indeed it did increase, and it made him just shy of what was valued at $50,000 when he was supposed to relinquish those stocks when he accepted his position with the Obama administration. And then in 2011, when it sold the stock value went to about 5 million, 4.85. So this is why I use the word treason in the title, because this is a man that allegedly provided aid and comfort to an enemy during these would be bombing suspects during a time of war, and that war just ended under the Biden administration, called the Global War on Terror. This is a war that started 1 minute.
Yep.
Okay. So let me briefly dig into Patrick Byrne and how John Brennan relates to voter fraud, because he has a strong presence. That means the CIA, a strong presence in voter fraud through Belgrade, Serbia, and the data center that was created there, and also Cartel del Soles out of Venezuela, and that's Maduro. So hopefully, Steve, you'll have me back on. I'll talk a little bit more about it, but thanks for listening.
Yeah, definitely have you back on. You got a lot of information. Thank you for coming on, and we'll get to you soon. Okay, our next guest is Derek Lind. Come on up, Derek. Hey, you're on, Derek.
Can you see me?
We can hear you. We can see you.
Okay, good. Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
It's an honor to be here. So my name is Derek Lind, and I'm actually part of a team called ACIT, Anoka County Election Integrity Team. That's a county based out of Minnesota. We're the fourth largest county in Minnesota, about 380,000 people, 200,000 voters. Our team came together 4 years ago, actually, in August of 2022, to try to do something about election integrity, some unique things about our team. All we focus on is election integrity. We understand we're all conservative Christians. We watched that election. We knew something was wrong. We had to do something about it. I think there's a big disconnect between the federal level and the local grassroots level. Everybody watches the news and says, this is terrible, that's terrible, but we don't know what to do about it. We're kind of waiting for somebody to come save us. And that's not what's happening. What has to happen, in my opinion, in my team's opinion, is we got to form at the local level and try to do something about it. So originally, when we got together, we were meeting once a week on a Monday, and we're all kind of sitting in a room and we're sharing stories and news together. And then one of the guys, we have an engineer on our team, real smart guy. He stands up and he says, "Hey, let's not just sit in a circle and complain about what's going on in this world. Let's study our election system, figure some stuff out, and do reports on it." And that just kind of changed our trajectory from there. So we started studying our election system, and what we realized is obviously we got a lot of things wrong with it. I would say, at a high level, we've got 10 major things that are wrong with our election system. Could be 100, but I really can't do much about that. Neither can my team. We all know mail-in ballots are terrible, but what am I going to do about that? We got to get rid of them eventually. But at the local level, there were some things we could do. And one of the things we noticed was that these poll pads, these electronic poll pads that you check in on election day, they are critical for that infrastructure. So if you want to make it more difficult to cheat in elections, you got to get rid of these electronic poll pads. And so we went to work on that. We went to battle in our county. We started at the county level, and then we dropped down to the city level. And we just had a vote. Our county, one other thing about those poll pads, they only last about every 6 years. So the good news is they got to throw them in the garbage every 6 years and buy new ones. And before they do that, they got to vote on it. So we went to battle with them last year, I think it was February or March, and tried to get them to not buy new poll pads. The county next door to us actually went back to paper, but we did not. We ended up, our county bought the poll pads. The vote was 4-2. Here's where it gets interesting, though. We dropped down to the city level, and we got some cities to agree with us. And there's a city of Oak Grove, which is in the northern part of our county. It's a little city. I think it's got about 8,000 people. They voted to go back to paper poll pads. And the county said the county sent out a felony threat letter saying that if you use paper poll pads, it's going to be a felony. But that little city stood their ground. I mean, it's a great story. And now that case is going to the Minnesota Supreme Court. Now the city doesn't have the money to fight on its own. Well, I don't want to speak for the city, but all these cities are, their budgets are strapped right now. But an independent law firm called the Upper Midwest Law Center took that case and said that statutorily the city of Oak Grove has the right to go back to paper poll pads. What's interesting about this story, from my perspective, is why the county and the state freaked out so much about those poll pads. And my takeaway from that is they got to have those things. They are critical. So again, if we got 10 things wrong with our election system, yeah, I want to fix all 10, and I think we should. I'm not going to stop until we do. But in the meantime, I got to take out the targets that we can get. And to me, that's the electronic poll pads. The second thing we found was the post-election review. This is something that happens about 10 days. I don't know if they do this in every state, but I know we do it here in Minnesota. About 10 days after the election, they go in and they randomly sample some ballots and see if the count is exact. Well, you can actually expand that. In fact, that was something that was happening in the city of Big Lake, which is right next to us. That happened in 2022. So we took that idea and we spread it to Anoka County. Anoka County has 21 cities. We got 8 cities to pass resolutions to hand count their votes. They thought it was a great idea. We basically showed up at the city council meetings and said, hey, you have an opportunity here to hand count your votes. Your votes are machine counted on election night. Let's hand count them, see if you get the same number. 8 cities agreed with us. Anoka County and the state of Minnesota pushed back and said, you may not count those votes. I thought that was interesting. My opinion, I'm not sure, I'm not going to give you my opinion on that, but to me, it's suspicious. Those votes belong to the people that cast them. They should be able to count them. So that's an example of how we actually got something done by focusing at the local level. And I think the idea is you want to kind of build that political support at the local level and then take it up to the state level. So think of it this way. You got Trump at the top saying we got problems with our elections. And then you got us at the local level saying we got problems with our elections. We want to fix it. And right in between, you've got the state of Minnesota run by Tim Walz, Steve Simon, Keith Ellison. They're doing everything they can to make sure nothing changes here. But that's how we have to operate. There has to be that grassroots effort. I'm not saying the stuff at the federal level doesn't matter. It matters. But I don't have time to study that. And I have to focus on election integrity the entire time. Otherwise, we're not going to get anything done. And I think our record speaks for itself. We got great people on our team. We work hard. We've got a website, by the way. It's aceit.vote. We each have our own responsibilities. And I really admire these people. A lot of our people are retired. We got some really smart people. We're not done. You know, I think when we got into this 4 years ago, we didn't think it was going to take this long. And we didn't think we'd still be here today. And I think we could be here a while because, we made progress, but we still got a long ways to go. So those are the big takeaways. Along the way, Liz Collin, she's a newspaper reporter up here. She made the movie The Fall of Minneapolis. She's a well-known newspaper reporter. She found out about us and did a story on us. And the story wasn't so much on what we had uncovered or what, that kind of stuff. The story was about us. And I think she was happy just to see citizens get involved. It's kind of like biblical citizenship. You go to church, you watch the news, but then you got to do, you can't just sit up
I'm doing fantastic. I'm seeing you. I'm doing fantastic. I'm seeing you.
Great to be with you. You know where I'm going to be tomorrow? With the President of the United States. He's going to be
All
in
right.
Vegas tomorrow, and I'll be there sitting in the front row and hopefully backstage.
Very
with a
much,
chance-
and
Yeah.
tell him about our show. Maybe he'll be interested in watching it one time.
Well, he might be interested in my show too.
He's
When I
always
get out there, you don't think I'm going to talk about my show, Steve? So,
Well, you always talk about your show, so now give us a little plug once in a while.
but by the way, the White House has said they're trying very hard to coordinate an interview between me and President Trump for either Thursday or Friday. So I should have my 17th TV interview with President Trump towards the end of this week, either Thursday or Friday. They said they're pretty sure it's going to get done. They're trying to clear a schedule to get me in there. So hopefully that'll happen. Fingers crossed, prayers, all above. Love talking to our 46th and 47th president. Excuse me, our 45th and 47th president. Should have been 45th. Should have been 45th, 46th, and 47th, but you know, 2 out of 3 is okay too.
Oh, and if people want to see Wayne, you're going to the Storm Summit in Vegas, right? From the 10th to the 13th.
Is
So
it it's about September now?
Yeah, it's in September. It's September.
Yeah, I
10th.
will be at that event in September. Yes, I'm speaking.
Yeah.
I think on Saturday morning, if I remember correctly. So that'll probably be the last day.
Yeah,
So
I'm
you're
speaking
now-
as well on the 12th. So it's stormsummit.us if people want to get tickets to it to see you speak. It'll be worth
Great.
it.
Great. And of course, my show. I got to make sure I get it a plug, and then I'll get right into my point of this entire event here, which is election integrity. So my 2 TV shows are America's Top 10 Countdown every Saturday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Real America's Voice TV, right after Steve Bannon, back to back with War Room with Steve Bannon. It reruns 4 times a weekend: midnight Friday, midnight East Coast time Saturday, and then 9 p.m. Sunday. And then America Speaks is my brand new TV show where it's a call-in show, and you can call me on Real America's Voice, 1-800-347-ROOT. And I wish all of you watching would call in every day, because I have great discussions with people. I want to hear what you think, your opinion, your comments, and your questions. 1-800-347-ROOT at 6 p.m. East Coast time, 3 p.m. West Coast time every day on YouTube, the RAV YouTube channel. And then it reruns. Actually, the run of the show is midnight Eastern, Monday through Friday, midnight Eastern, and 9 p.m. Pacific. My website's root4america.com. All right, so the point of why we're here, how long do I have, Steve? How long are you giving me here?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. All right. So national security emergency. You've heard it, I'm sure, from quite a few other guests. I don't know how many that were giving me credit because I invented the idea. I'm an idea guy. I get thousands of letters a week. Muhammad Ali said it ain't bragging if you could back it up. So I'm not bragging, but every letter says the same thing. Every host in America is fantastic. Every conservative host, we love them all, but they all complain all day. You're the only one who comes up with creative solutions. I'm a solution guy, and I'm the guy who invented out of thin air no tax on Social Security and no tax on overtime, which became the reason that Trump, in my opinion, was elected in 2024 and became the reason that his first year was a success, because that was the heart of the big, beautiful bill. Those were my ideas. No one in the whole world had ever said a word about them ever. I invented them out of thin air, and I talked about them for about 6 months and kept texting Trump on his cell phone. And finally, he announced them both. No tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. And so I'm the guy who came up with in 2019, when Trump could not get Congress to fund the wall, I invented an idea out of thin air, and I gave it at the Wyoming State Republican annual dinner. And I announced to the crowd, and I said, do you like it? If you like it, I'll bring it to President Trump. The crowd gave me a standing ovation. So I knew it was a good idea. And it was, if you can't get Congress to fund the wall, let's declare a national security emergency. And I did all the research. A president can do that. And there's nothing Democrats can do to stop him. And then that allows you to use the money in the Pentagon budget to fund the wall. You go right over Congress's head. You don't need him. He did it. Nobody ever sued him. That proves you cannot take him to court. You got to get a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress to overcome it. And nobody can do that. So President Trump got his wall because of my idea. And I don't care whose idea it is, because in the end, the only thing I care about is making America great again and making America prosperous again, making the American economy go and saving the American middle class. And so the credit doesn't matter. All that matters is that we get America on the go again. And so I came up with this idea again about 5 months ago, which is a national security emergency, this time, instead of for borders, for elections. And you could take all the ideas in the SAVE Act, which I knew was never going to pass. Never. As a matter of fact, John Goodman, who's a good friend of mine and of Steve Stern, and he's become my election advisor and my election integrity expert, and he's a brilliant guy. And he came to me and did all the research and said, you're 100% right. There's no way to overcome a national security emergency. The SAVE Act will never pass, but if it does pass, it will never be in effect for the election, the midterms, because they will take it to court instantly, and it takes time to weed its way through all the different federal appeals courts and eventually the Supreme Court. Probably takes a year. So there'll never be a SAVE Act in time for the midterms to save the midterms. So get it out of your mind. The SAVE Act will not work. The SAVE Act cannot be passed. You need to end the filibuster. They're never going to do it. They don't have the votes. And even if it did pass, it'll go right, be a legal challenge and go right to the courts, never be in effect by this November's midterms. So I came up with an idea that would overcome, just like national security emergency for the border allowed Trump to go right over Congress's head and build the wall, fund the wall, build the wall. This allows him to go right over Congress's head and automatically make elections fair again, honest again, inject integrity into elections. All the ideas in the SAVE Act will be in the national security emergency. Now, some great people have been working on this for a long time. Jerome Kersey, Peter Tickton, John Goodman, all great people. They had an EO, an executive order. Executive orders, you can't apply the same rules. You can take it to court. So the executive order is the same as passing the SAVE Act. It won't work in time for the midterms. They can challenge it. My idea is not an executive order. It's a completely different thing. It's a national security emergency. And I know everyone's now talking about it because I've been pounding it in everyone's head for 6 months now on Bannon's show, on my shows, and all over my columns all over the internet. National security emergency. Takes a 2/3 vote of Congress to overturn it. They'll never get it done. Trump will have it in time for the midterms. And I said on Bannon's show a month ago, he isn't going to announce it until probably late August or the first week or two of September. And it's on track. It's going to happen. My sources tell me it is going to happen. Thank you, John Goodman, for a lot of great ideas. Thank you, Steve Stern, for giving me a platform to get it out there. National security emergency for elections. It will include photo ID for every single federal election, photo ID, proof of citizenship, and then no more mail-in ballots, only absentee ballots. You can't just automatically get a mail-in ballot. Those days are gone. And then most importantly, machine voting instead of paper ballots. If we can do that, we will win the midterms. If we can't, I don't think we'll win the midterms. Right now, the odds at betting sites are like 85% that Democrats are going to win the midterm. I'm taking that bet. I'm making big bets on the GOP because I believe Trump will take my idea and literally sign it in early September. And we will have a national security emergency for elections. And he will institute all of that, and they cannot stop him. Democrats are scared to death. They know they can't stop him. How do I know? When I went on Bannon's show, War Room, like 6 times in the last month, every time I was attacked by all these liberal organizations, including Media Matters, that's funded by George Soros. They are so scared to death. And then last week, I went on TV on Bannon's show and my show, and I attacked Fauci. And I said, this guy is a mass murderer. He should get the death penalty. Literally, if a fair trial, fair jury of his peers, and a great legal team, he deserves all of that. But if he's found guilty, death penalty. This guy is a mass murderer, and he's committed crimes against humanity. And sure enough, the Daily Show, the liberal Daily Show, featured me on TV saying that, and they all laughed at me. I mean, it's just, the liberals are scared to death of what I'm saying. And when they're scared to death, they mock you, and they laugh at you, and they attack you. I'm right over the target. National security emergency for elections. And Dr. Fauci will never be prosecuted on the federal level. But I'm the first guy who wrote 6 months ago, he can be prosecuted despite the pardon on the state level. And you can get the death penalty on the state level. 24 Republican states still have the death penalty. Fauci deserves a death penalty trial. And it scares liberals to death when I'm on the money with everything I say, and they can't stop it. On the state level, there's nothing they can do. Alabama, Florida, Oklahoma, they could all prosecute this vicious, horrible Joseph Mengele-like mass murderer. So those are my ideas, Steve. I hope you enjoy them, and I hope they're put into effect. I'm Wayne Alaroot, rootforamerica.com, America's Top 10 Countdown, and America Speaks. The phone number every day, weeknights, 800-347-ROOT, and you can leave a voicemail 24 hours a day at that number, 800-347-ROOT, and I take the voicemails and read them on the air and respond to them on the air. So right now, you can leave a voicemail, 800-347-ROOT, and I'll play it on my show tonight. Thank you, Steve. God bless you. Root for America.
Wayne, tell us why President Trump is coming to Las Vegas.
Well, it just so happens all of it has to do with no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security. 2 of 3 are mine. He's coming out his economic tax cuts. That's the whole reason he's there. That's the entire point of the event. It's at Red Rock Casino, which happens to be in Summerlin, 5 minutes from my home in Summerlin. So it's right on my home turf, and I'll get a chance to talk to him. And I hope we have a great conversation, and I can push national security emergency for elections.
Fantastic. Well, I got to say that Wayne Root answers every text, every email. I don't know how he does it with all the people that do this, but we appreciate everything you're doing, and thank you for taking the time to come on today. Linda, do you want to say anything to this great guy that I know?
Oh, I just love listening to you, and I can't wait to see you in person. That's why I brought up the Storm Summit, September 10th through the 13th. I believe the 12th is when you'll be speaking. So we need people to sign up and come see you in person.
Rootforamerica.com. Thanks, guys. I'm off to do my show and my podcast. Bye-bye.
You got it.
God bless
Thank
everyone.
you.
God
Thank
bless
you.
you all.
You got it. Our next guest, one of the most famous guys I know. And the reason, when I first started this, the first guy that put us on was my good friend, Stephen Bannon. He came to me about 2.5 years ago and said, we're going to put this live on the War Room and on Getter. The second guy that came was Lance from the Big Mig and George from the Big Mig. And every time we try to have a podcaster on, but Lance was our first guy that came. He's put me on numerous times. He's a fantastic guy. I want everybody to watch the Big Mig. He's going to tell us how to do that. So Lance, come on down. You're fantastic.
Hey, Steve, thanks so very much for having me today. And thanks for the audience being here. Of course, this is super important. You can catch the Big Mig Show on Rumble, YouTube, and Locals. You can also find us on every major podcast platform. We're also a nationally syndicated radio show on Liberty Roundtable Live and the Liberty News Network. So you can catch us all over the country. We appreciate the support from you, Steve. Always have. I appreciate the fact that you've got behind Donald Trump maybe one of the highest energy levels of any guy I've ever seen. You never stop. So thankfully, we've got people like you fighting behind the scenes, doing everything you're doing. So I hope the audience appreciates the amount of work, because sometimes this is a thankless job. The last time I was on, you'll remember, I might have been a little doom and gloom. I talked about the midterms. I've been talking about the national security emergency option for about a year now, maybe longer than Wayne. Because I said that an executive order wasn't strong enough, and that we clearly, the influence of what's going on in our election systems is a national security interest. We're operating like a third world nation. The Supreme Court held that, the fundamental canons of statutory construction, is what actually can maintain and define what the court system says is legal and isn't legal. And, an emergency, according to Merriam-Webster, it's an unforeseen combination of circumstances or the resulting state that calls for immediate action. And it's an emergency. Our election systems are absolutely compromised. It doesn't have anything to do with Joe Biden's stolen installed presidency. It's got to do with what's going on across the nation, both state and federal. We have the voter rolls poorly maintained. They're inaccurate. The mail-in ballot issues. Look at the vulnerabilities about chain of custody. We saw all sorts of things going on where they couldn't be verified. The signatures didn't match. The signatures matched too well, meaning that one person had filled all the ballots. We saw the shredded ballots. We saw the stolen ballots. There is no chain of custody. This ballot system we got with the machines, we've heard all kinds of issues about Dominion, Smartmatic, Scytl, all true. You got inconsistent, or absent voter identification requirements. Yeah, the SAVE Act's not going to pass. it's not going to be the Holy Grail. I mentioned on the previous interview that if there wasn't a massive amount of black op deep state arrests, which of course we're seeing that that's not going to happen. Pam Bondi didn't do anything. I'm not going to pick on Todd Blanche. He hasn't been in long enough to do anything. But we don't see government gangsters getting dragged out of their jobs. We now know that the intelligence agencies hid lots of voter information that had to do with foreign interference. Donald Trump made it obvious. The CIA, the DIA, the NSA, the FBI, you take any alphabet agency, and I don't see any arrests happening there. Todd Blanche appears to be the only one that's capable of firing deep state actors. Not Todd Blanche, I'm sorry. Pulte appears to be the only one that's willing to fire deep state actors. I don't understand what Kash Patel is doing. He's been on my show. I welcome him back on. I welcome anybody on to challenge me. I voted for Donald Trump, but I don't like what's going on. I remember the statements about we caught them all. I remember the statements, we're going to drain the swamp. We haven't drained one drop of the swamp. Electronic voting systems and the tabulation security risks. We've seen them hacking the voting machines with a ballpoint pen. You can buy a $120 USB hacking tool off of Amazon and you can hack the machines. You got double voting, multiple voting. You got multi-jurisdiction eligibility failures, ballot collection harvesting. You got third-party handling of ballots. They're turning in ballots. We don't even know where they came from. Foreign interference, we talked about that. Cyber threats, disinformation campaigns. We saw it overseas. We heard about some of the stuff that had to do with Italy Gate. We got suspended for that. Got partisan administration last-minute rule changes. You got certification disputes. Listen, the campaign finance world, it's dark money. It's foreign money. It's private funding of election administrations, and they're all participating, state and federal. And I talk about both sides of the aisle on our show. On our show, we'll go after everybody. I only want what's good for the country, what's good for the American people, and what matters for us. All this chatter, there's no doubt. Thune, he's worthless. But in general, our Congress is worthless. They don't seem to care about voter integrity. They don't want to have voter ID. Why? Because, of course, the Democrats did an amazing job. They built and now we're hearing stories from Bovino that the immigration invasion is over 100 million, not the 30 million that's been quoted. I don't know if it's 100 million, but if it is 100 million, think about that. These are ghost votes that they want to have and they want to use to manipulate our elections. So you're talking about a massive amount of fraud. And I believe the national emergency, hold card, the death card is the only option left because these arrests aren't going to happen. There aren't going to be any arrests. We all heard there were going to be arrests. We all heard they were going to go after him. We heard things about Gitmo. We hear things about this case in Florida. We don't have time for that. If you want to win the midterms, you're going to have to pull. This is the only option our president has. And I hope Wayne is able to convince him that this is the only option we have, because I am tired of realizing that my vote just doesn't seem to really matter. And it's a horrible thing. I'm in lots and lots of chat rooms. We don't always participate, but we listen in. Some of the chat rooms have, influencers with millions and millions of followers. That the room has kind of pre-requirements of people that have a decent following base, have a good ear. Everybody's talking about it. They feel like their vote's not going to matter in this corrupted system. And they're not going to get anything passed by Congress because not only is Congress ineffective, I think they're complicit. And anybody that doesn't believe they're complicit, I think is making a major mistake. We haven't seen we've seen a handful of convictions for voter fraud across the nation. Does anybody in this group or anybody online feel satisfied about the results so far? I mean, do you guys feel satisfied about the number of deep states arrests thus far? I don't. I'm angry. And I tell people, one of the things I talk about regularly on the show, if it was up to me, no congressional member from our federal government, state or House of Representatives would get service here in the United States. I wouldn't serve them in restaurants. I would cut off their cell phones. I wouldn't pick up their trash. I wouldn't mow their lawns. I wouldn't do their dry cleaning. They don't deserve any service. They want to go on recess again. Can you imagine the Senate? Another recess. When the founders and framers actually build this grand experiment and they designed it, the idea was that our congressional members, it was supposed to be a part-time job. They were supposed to come in, and then when they got done, they went back to their tobacco farms and they went back to their, steel manufacturing companies. They were only supposed to be there part-time. Well, that's not what we have now, right? It's got more complicated because we didn't keep it specific, right? Our government was supposed to be a government of limited jurisdiction, only 17 subject matters in the Constitution. That's what they were supposed to be limited to. But of course, we know that didn't happen. They went unconstitutional. They went non-constitutional. They took Admiralty Maritime and they expanded way past anything they were supposed to do because they love big government. That's where the fraud happens. Look at the fraud we've got just in the financial end. J.D. Vance talking about trillions of dollars of Medicare and Medicaid fraud. Think about those services, how much better they could be if these fraudsters weren't allowed to do what they're doing. But the truth of the matter is that money's being funneled into elections. It's being funneled into politicians' pockets. And as any American, regardless of what side of the aisle, I don't care whether you're a liberal or a conservative, I'm talking about the 8 points in the middle. You're never going to get the far, far left or the far, far right to align. But the 8 points in the middle, you'd be surprised. I get everybody on my show, and we all talk. And we agree on 8 out of 10 points. The truth of the matter is I'm not talking about people with TDS, or I'm not talking about neo-Nazi racist rhetoric on the far right. I'm talking about people that care about the country, that care about their grandchildren, their children, their children's children, you know, their husbands, their wives, their girlfriends. They are angry. They're sick of this garbage. They're sick of the theft. Elon Musk exposed it. Anybody seen any arrests coming from that? I haven't. 14 magic money computers. They were computers that weren't on the Treasury Department system, meaning I could go in right now and I could say, Steve Stern, hey, I think Steve's doing a good job. I'm going to send him 100 million. Wasn't even in the system. Federal Reserve doesn't care. A private institution that creates a fiat currency out of thin air with no backing, charges us interest, charges us the money to print it. Yeah, it's not good. And I've got to tell you, it's a big job. And I know Donald Trump's been working on a lot of areas. But this election integrity thing, he's got one option. This is it. Wayne Root is correct. The national emergency strategy is the only strategy left. Because otherwise, I'll tell you what's going to happen. I'll predict it. If he doesn't pull that hold card, then you can count on the fact that the midterms are lost. And after that, it's going to be a total shit show. It's going to be nothing but impeach, overturn, do this, do that, obstruct, yada, yada, yada. It's going to be the same routine they did to him the first time. And listen, if we're waiting for the judiciary to fix anything, oh, forget it. The judiciary is so compromised. The Department of Justice is so compromised. All those agencies have major problems. They're not doing what they are. They're operating in a whole different area. You just saw it. Listen, Janine Pirro, I actually thought she was a good choice. I don't like what she did with those 4 individuals and dismissed their charges about the national monuments. Defacement of a national monument with video captures, with photos, with witnesses. And you're going to tell me there wasn't enough evidence to keep those charges in place and charge those people? I say there was. I don't know how many of these people are compromised, but for the people in the audience, I would literally not give any of these congressional members an inch of room. I would harass them online. I would leave them phone calls. I do it all the time. I call them up on my show. I call them up and tell them what a crappy job they're doing, that they suck and they're not serving the American people. I'm
1
sure
minute.
they won't make it.
1
Yes,
minute.
sir. Are we out of time? Am I out of time, Steve?
1 minute. 1 minute.
All right. Well, listen, if you love what I had to say, you can always catch me on the Big Mig Show on Rumble, YouTube, and Locals. And we're also on every major podcast platform. You can find us at Lance Miliaccio, G. Ballantine, and the Big Mig Show on X. And of course, George gets the extra character everywhere else. They cut off one of his vowels, so it's George Ballantine everywhere else, but G. Ballantine on X. Hey, Steve, I love what you guys are doing. I appreciate the fact that you stayed in the fight. I'm angry. You know, I talked the other day about if I saw Fauci at Costco, I'd have to give him a power slap. And I was attacked wildly on X because the people that are out there that are Fauciites that are brainwashed. But listen, this is what we're down to. I'm telling you, don't let these people walk on the streets. Don't let them come into your businesses. These congressional members should be stopped. They shouldn't get any service at all until they serve the American public. We need this national emergency. It's the only choice that Trump has. It's it.
How do they get to your show?
Yeah, you just over on Rumble, you just type in the Big Mig Show. You'll find us there. We're usually featured in Editor's Picks. It's 11 a.m. Eastern Standard, Monday through Friday. And of course, you can find us on YouTube and you can find us on every major podcast platform. We haven't been thrown off for suspended yet over there, but I don't know. You never know. Never say never when it comes to them trying to make sure we don't get to say what we want to say.
Thank you for coming on. We really appreciate it. We'll have you on again. We got to get your buddy on too, George.
Yeah.
You got it. All right, our next person coming on from California, Ralph Pizzulo. Come on down, Ralph.
Hello, hello. Hi,
Hello.
Linda. How are you? Good to see you.
Good.
Hi, Stephen.
Hey.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're quite welcome.
Holding up your book, Stolen Elections. Everyone
Thank-
needs to read this book by you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, the floor is yours.
All right. So I was brought into this about 2 years ago when one of two government whistleblowers, a man named, the two of them are named Martine Rodil and Gary Bernson. They were doing in whistleblowing, looking into corruption of the Cartel del Sol in Venezuela. And they were recruiting sources who were telling them about how the cartel was money laundering and how big it was and how they were, they were shipping cocaine into the United States and other drugs. And this was the criminal regime in Venezuela, started by Hugo Chavez and continued by Nicolas Maduro. And people that they were recruiting within the cartel were telling them that the cartel was also involved in stealing elections in the United States, which had started in 2008. And what happened was that in 2004, Hugo Chavez, who was the dictator of Venezuela, faced a national referendum. And his Cuban friends, including Fidel Castro, warned him that he was going to lose the referendum unless he did something about it. What he did is he recruited 3 young computer engineers in Venezuela, and they came up with software that they placed into Olivetti lottery machines, because this was the very beginning of election machines. And they used that software to steal the election for Nicolas Maduro in 2004. He and Fidel Castro were extremely pleased with this, and Nicolas Maduro and Hugo Chavez rewarded these 3 engineers with $200 million. He told them, go ahead and perfect your software and let's try it out in some elections in Latin America. In the early 2000s, there were a number of elections in Latin America where leftist candidates won surprisingly positive results that defied the poll numbers and so on and so forth. And this included Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua, Evo Morales in Bolivia, and the Kirchners in Argentina, etc. This was all done through using the same software that was inserted into election machines. For Fidel Castro, this was a dream come true. He had, for 40 years, had been trying to foment leftist revolutions throughout Latin America. Famously, Che Guevara was trying to start one in Bolivia when he was captured and killed there. These 3 engineers founded a company called Smartmatic. It was incorporated in the United States, and they started petitioning to run elections in districts in the United States. Smartmatic, so throughout this whole process, they hid the ownership of the software and the source code. It has always remained with the Consejo Nacional Electoral in Venezuela. They still control it today. Smartmatic eventually, these owners of Smartmatic eventually bought a small election company in California called Sequoia. Sequoia was eventually sold to Dominion, which is another small election company in Ontario, Canada. Dominion, after the 2024 election, became Victory Vote. They have done all this sort of corporate manipulation to hide the true ownership of the Venezuelan software, but it is still essentially the same. The source code is still owned by by the Consejo Nacional Electoral in Venezuela. And it is now found in most of our election machines that determine the results of our elections. When China found out about this, they started to invest huge amounts of money in this system. And they used the same software and exported it to countries in Asia, including South Korea. And South Korea now there's a big movement afoot in South Korea to try to clean up their election system. We also learned in 2024, when Elon Musk started Doge, started looking into the money that was spent in the federal government for nefarious purposes. And he zeroed in on AID, which was supposed to be an aid, dispensing foreign aid. Within the USAID budget, they found something called CEPS, which is the Consortium for Election and Political Process Strengthening. Well, CEPS gave out billions of dollars to help promote Smartmatic software throughout countries, as many as 72 countries around the world. So we learned then that our intelligence services, our CIA, had found out, had seen the benefit of this software and how effective it was in stealing elections. And they were using it to turn elections in as many as 72 countries around the world. And that's where we are today. We know all this information. The president, the White House knows all this information. He is trying, as he announced 2 weeks ago, he knows that the intelligence community was complicit in distributing the software and using the software, and he's trying to expose them. At the same time, the intelligence community is fighting tooth and nail to keep this secret. It's one of the reasons why when President Trump last November removed the dictator of Venezuela, Maduro, from office, he inserted another member of the cartel, Delcy Rodriguez, into power, therefore protecting the cartel and allowing the intelligence community to continue using their corrupted software to control elections around the world. The president and the White House are in the process now of dismantling that structure. Many people have been fired from the intelligence community, and there are very robust investigations being conducted now by the Justice Department into all the people who were complicit in this operation. Listeners need to understand that the Cuban intelligence service has made has turned a number of people within our intelligence community and within Washington over the years. Secretary of State Rubio has been pointing that out recently, starting this on Sunday on Fox News. So we have a very difficult situation. A lot of our institutions have been infiltrated. A lot of people have been compromised and are actually working for our enemies. But one thing that the American people need to understand is that this whole operation against us was launched by enemies of the United States, people who are trying to overturn our system and weaken us. And this was a consortium of our enemies, including Venezuela, Cuba, Iran, and China. And they were also funding a lot of the movements, social movements, that we've seen in our country that have been extremely disruptive, including Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and others. These are not organic movements. These are movements that are being supported by hundreds of millions of dollars from these enemies of the United States.
Well, thank you very much. That's great information. We'll try to get you back on again. Shall we book up, Linda? You want to ask any questions? How do
Yeah.
they get you?
That's what I was just going to ask. How do they get your book, Ralph?
The best place to find it is on Amazon, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about this subject. And thank you for this opportunity, Stephen and Linda. It's always great to see you.
You
Pleasure
too.
to have you. What is your email in case anybody wants your email?
My email is Pezzullo, Pezzullo @mindspring.com.
Thanks again for coming on. Next guest, if we can get her on, Annie Delgado, who is the Conservative Watch, USA.com. Annie, can you come on? I don't see you. Can you get her on, Melissa? Or is she?
I'm going to check her camera on her computer. It might be
I don't think
closed.
she's on the computer. I saw her on her car. Looks like she's not on there. So let's bring on John Goodman, and if Andy gets back on, we'll get her on. John Goodman, good friend of mine. You heard everybody talking about him today. He once in a while gets upset. So hopefully today he wasn't upset because he saw a lot of people that he has helped come on and talk about a lot of things that he's helped with. Now, some of the people took some of the information that he did and he found and said it was theirs, but I know that it's John's. So John, come on down.
Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you, Linda. How are you?
You too. I actually have your email that I just got with a little rebellion now and then is a good thing.
Okay, there you go. There you go. I enjoyed being on your show. You really drilled down on the issues on Sinkowitz. It's a very good show. I enjoyed being a guest on your show, Linda.
Thank you so much.
So I want to just make a couple points. First of all, when you hear Peter Tickton and Dr. Jerome Corsi and Wayne Root and myself talking about the national security emergency, we are in no way playing haters to the SAVE Act or the Republicans that support the SAVE Act. What we are doing is saying what realistically can be done that cannot be challenged and obstructed by Congress and judges with the election 90 days from today. Now, the SAVE Act, the problems were the Republicans should have broken the filibuster prior to bringing the SAVE Act to the floor. In other words, Republicans knew they only had 53 Republican senators, yet without the filibuster broken, it takes 60 votes. So the Republicans knew going in that they were going to need 7 votes from Democrats on a bill to eliminate the Democrats' own cheating. So we saw a red flag right there immediately. And that's when Wayne Allen Root and I started talking, and he started talking about a national security emergency. And then the SAVE Act never even was introduced until January. Not enough time for something that affects 165 million registered voters in the country, and knowing the Democrats would push back on it so heavily. So the bottom line is, at this point, and Lance was right what he said, anything legislatively or through executive order would immediately be challenged by Mark Elias and the Democrat attorneys and never be adjudicated in 90 days. So whether you love the SAVE Act or don't love the SAVE Act, we've got to look at this not with emotion, but with what actually can be done realistically. The emotion is, oh my God, we got to hang on to the SAVE Act. It's a basic bill and there's no reason it shouldn't have been passed. And that's all true. But it still doesn't prevent the Democrats from stealing the midterms. And our job is to find solutions and not get caught up in what we wish had happened, but deal with what actually is. Okay? So I will say that. And then I will break some news. I don't think it's classified. I'm never going to release it. But many people don't know that Donald Trump had a executive order, 17 pages worth, ready to roll last year. That was the supernova of SAVE Act. Had everything in the SAVE Act. Even had the paper ballots. It had security cameras at voting stations. It had a history of fraud. And President Trump was talked out of releasing it because he was told there was a bill that was coming down the pike shortly called the SAVE Act, and that it was sure to pass. And then President Trump would not have to deal with appeals and judges and lawyers, and it could just be done legislatively, and boom. But once again, that bill, the SAVE Act, look at my perspective as an election integrity expert. It doesn't address voting machines. So how can I be like totally on board with an election integrity bill that allows the voting machines that President Trump and we know are compromised and vulnerable and hacked to not even be addressed? So it's not what's in the SAVE Act that's a problem. It's what's not in the SAVE Act that is the problem. And many don't know that there were two versions of the SAVE Act. The first version was the one President Trump didn't like. It had voter ID and proof of citizenship, and that's it. Remember, he called it a watered down version. The second version added mail-in ballot, no mutilation of children for transgender, and no men and women's sports. Okay. Now we hear there's a new push for a talking filibuster that Susan Collins has flipped to she will vote for the SAVE Act. But what you need to know is that's back to version 1 that doesn't even address mail-in ballot or voting machines. Neither one. So that's why Susan Collins changed her vote. Now, if they go to version 2, then Susan Collins will do like she did on the other votes and say, well, now that mail-in ballots are in it, no, I vote no to the SAVE Act. So I respect Mike Lee. I respect Anna Paulina Luna. I respect all of our Republican leaders. But the bottom line is, it is just unthinkable that you're putting forth a bill that doesn't address illegal aliens voting through mail-in ballot by the millions, no voting machine addressing of that. And that makes me think of Tina Peters immediately, every time. Immediately. I'm thinking, God, if I was Tina Peters, I'd be like, you know, and it cost Tina almost 3 years of her life with false imprisonment with those voting machines. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. The bottom line is that the SAVE Act, maybe if it started a year earlier, maybe they could have worked it out, but it's too late for the SAVE Act. And I don't say that in a mean way. I am a 100% MAGA red Republican, and we got to deal with reality and not emotion from this point forward. If you want to reach me, anyone, I'm on Getter at johngood1965, or you can email me at gjohn8646@gmail.com. And again, my friend Steve Stern, a lot of these things I've been able to do would not have been possible without Steve Stern, because Steve Stern is the one that puts me in contact with the Peter Ticktons and the Jerome Corseys and the Wayne Allen Roots and the Mike Lindells. I don't know these people where I can just call them. I can now, but without Steve Stern, never in a million years. So Steve Stern does a lot behind the scenes that doesn't, as they say in sports, it doesn't show up in the box score, but it's very important. Thanks very much.
Thanks, John. And now hopefully we can get back Annie Delgado. Annie, can you come on? And I've got your hat right here.
Okay, I'm here.
You're on.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you guys earlier.
Can you hear us now?
Well, yeah, I can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Go ahead. You're on.
All right. Well, it's great to be with you, Steve, and all these beautiful people that have been on. I've been listening to, and it's a beautiful day in beautiful Florida. However, we got to fight hard to keep it that way, don't we?
100%.
Yeah. So I see most of the conversation have been election integrity, of course, but the last gentleman touched on some really good points with the Save America Act. But I'm gonna stick to what I've been doing, my organization, and all the other wonderful grassroots organizations that have been working with me for years and years across the state of Florida. And so I'll start off by saying, yes, I'm Annie Marie Delgado. I am the president of Conservative Watch USA currently, but I started in politics 30 some odd years ago. And when President Trump called me and Corey Lewandowski in 2015, now I have worked with President Trump for 2 decades before that. But when they called and asked me to meet them at Mar-a-Lago and hired me to be the Florida State Director for Grassroots and Coalitions for the Trump campaign, I can tell you that we have not stopped. I have certainly not stopped. And many of us, quite frankly. And we continue, but there's just an amazing amount of people that have come along with us all, and built this wonderful, wonderful, I call it the helping hands. And I want to give out a big shout out to you, Steve. I want to give a big shout out to Raj with Defend Florida, Kathy Chamberlain, and many, many more. And I just don't have time to acknowledge everyone, but all of these folks and what we did with election integrity and going county by county across the whole state of Florida and knocking on doors and getting affidavits, and it'd be, 123 Smith Lane, and you get there and, the people that live there have no idea who the people voted for that address. We've seen so many of that, on and on it goes. And then you go next door and it's a vacant lot, but yet, 5 people voted from that address. So we all know the shenanigans, but here's one thing that really troubles me, is that we worked so hard to get rid of the Dominion machines in the state of Florida. And in 2018, I worked with the attorneys and I worked with RNC when we had all the shenanigans down in Broward County and Palm Beach County. And thank God we didn't wind up with Andrew Gillum back then. However, those shenanigans continue. They continue because, and I'm probably not going to get a whole lot of love about what I'm about to say, but Ron DeSantis had an opportunity to take them all out, and he didn't. He didn't. And in Palm Beach County, especially, he replaced the supervisor of election, because you remember down in Broward County, we got rid of that woman there, and then in Palm Beach County was Susan Booker, and the Broward County was under Rick Scott. Then DeSantis put Wendy Link Satori in there. She was then, at that time, a registered Republican. But immediately after that, and Ron put her in that position, changed her voter registration to be a Democrat. And there's a lot of problems down there. And why DeSantis has not removed this woman yet is beyond belief. But that being said, there were 17 counties. We were successful in getting 50 counties with these Dominion machines out. And why DeSantis has done this around the whole country. And, when I look at the shenanigans that are still going on, because if you think it's not, oh, hell yes, it is. Right now, we have a governor's race coming up. And you can see what's happening. Now, I don't know anybody so far that has spoken here, or even you, quite frankly, Steve, that I've worked for Trump for 3 decades that have done that. And anybody has, great. And anybody who's even less, great. Okay, we love that. But I can tell you that there is something very, very wrong with what's happening right now, that we have to pay attention to. Because if you think for 1 minute that all the Republican executive committees, RECs, okay, they have been doing their own straw polls And Paul Renner has been winning every single one of them. And then our chairman for the Republican Party of Florida sends out a letter to all 67 county chairs for the RECs. Oh, you're not allowed to do straw polls. Oh, really? Based on what? You're violating your own rules. Rule number 8. There's a lot of shenanigans and things that are going on that not only do not make sense, they're completely in opposition of their own rules. And so when we look at this election right now, which is vitally important for the state of Florida, because I'm not going to get into name bashing or anything, but I will give accolades. And I give all the accolades to Speaker of the House, Paul Renner, a 23-year Navy commander, a prosecutor, an assistant state attorney, the Speaker of the House for the state of Florida, where our governor, Ron DeSantis, did say that under Paul Renner's leadership, there's no one that could match what he was able to accomplish. He was the architect of bringing that agenda, the good things that we were able to achieve under the leadership of Paul Renner. And when we look at how in the world were there 100,000 blank ballots in Miami? How does that happen? It doesn't happen. There's a good friend of ours, Chris Gleason. He knows exactly the answer. We all know the answer. But what we have to be cognizant of the fact is we can't let it happen again. And there are still 17 counties that have those dominions. And it's being utilized in a way against our party and our candidates. And for one, that, you have all these protests going on. No king? Yeah, you got that right. We don't have a king and we don't coordinate anybody. And I've worked so hard for Trump, but I truly, truly, in all my heart, and I know that with this endorsement that he's made in this governor's race, poor decision. Very. And I know this personally because when they called me in the beginning of 2025, for goodness sake, and they asked me to help with Byron Donald's campaign, I said, sure. Okay. Didn't take long. I was getting calls from many other people saying, what the hell are you doing, Annie? Don't you know who this guy is? And I said, well, why don't y'all enlighten me? They said, start with his criminal record. Well, that led me to a whole lot more. And it led me to walk away from that and say, under no clear conscience could I support this guy. Hell no. It's a hard no. Excuse me. Not hell, but a hard no. Anyway, moving forward from that, we're working so very diligently with the precincts. I really just want to encourage everyone, all the different organizations, and there are so many of us here together, to make sure that you all have signed up if you haven't already. And I don't know, in some counties, it may have been now past the time to sign up to be a poll watcher, a poll worker. There's a difference between a poll worker and a poll watcher. And if you want to
Today is the last day.
yes. Okay. So then all the more important reason that, and it's the end of the day right now. That should have been mentioned at the top of the show. If you haven't signed up to be a poll worker, but long story short, we've been able to get a lot of our Conservative Watch USA has chapters all around the state of Florida. Our people are working this whole state, and we're doing a really good job. And we've been doing that really good job. And it's the hard grunt work for a very long time. There's plenty of people that can get up here, talk about, yeah, I believe in this and I believe in that. Yeah, well, do you believe in blood, sweat, and tear and getting your ass out there and doing something and signing up and putting those signs up and doing all that hard work that it takes? That's what we're doing. Sorry for the, I'm a little hot under the collar because it's very important that people understand what is at stake here. It is our Constitution of the state of Florida that is at stake right now. I hear folks talking about the Constitution of the United States of America. Yeah, I'm all about that. I get that. But you know where I live? I live in Florida. You know where I raise my children? And I'm raised in Florida. And you know what I have to protect? And we all have to get on board is the Florida Constitution. And the only person that I know that can do this is Paul Renner.
Thank you very much, Annie. Our last guest, who was going to be our first guest, Linda Sinkowitz, but she got tied up. So come on down, Linda, and tie
Well,
us
why
up.
don't I tell folks how to reach me?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Annie.
Thank you. Okay, so at any point in time, I thank you all, and you can go to conservativewatchusa@gmail.com and certainly email me there, or go onto our website, conservativewatchusa.com, and I look forward to speaking to you all.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Steve, she's spunky. She's got a lot of spunk.
Yeah, she's tough.
Wow. So I'm with Fight Voter Fraud, but there's a number of things that we've been doing. First, we have been getting some law enforcement agencies contacting us that have had our double voters as it's moving through the system. So yay, it's only been a year or so, but we are seeing some progress with that. Also, we added about 3 months ago, Sinkowitz presents the Candidate Spotlight. And I want everyone to know, if you have a candidate and you want to have them have a 20-minute interview where they can actually say their platform, they can even give us their questions, we are willing to do that. They just need to send me an email to Linda, Linda, at fightvoterfraud.org. That's .org. And we can arrange it. We've been doing people from California to Texas to Connecticut, where I live, all over the country. So we don't care what party, although I highly doubt the Democrats would want to come on my show, Steve, especially if they see my regular program, Sinkowitz, because we are not nonpartisan anymore. But it doesn't matter what you're running for. We would be more than happy to give you 20 minutes so you can get the video to your constituents and they can see where you stand with everything. The next thing, because I know, again, Steve, time is running short. The Storm Summit is September 10th to the 13th, and that's in Las Vegas. So you can go to stormsummit.us. You have Wano Savin and Matt Meck are the two key people putting this on. So sign up for it. There is, all kinds of wonderful guests. In fact, there were several of them that were on the program today, from Peter Tickton to Wayne Root to Ian Trottier, Greg Stenstrom. They're all going to be there live. It was the Fraud Summit was last month, or actually it was in June, and it was a phenomenal success there as well. So I encourage everyone, if you can, get to the Storm Summit. So other than that, like I said, we are doing things like in Connecticut, we have started a petition because our Secretary of State has refused to check for any illegals on our voter rolls and has said she will not use the SAVE, the alien ID system that the federal government has set up. I mean, North Carolina did it. North Carolina also put parameters in place so legitimate people will not lose their right to vote. But because Connecticut is one of the states that is a sanctuary state, they absolutely need the illegals to be voting. And obviously, we don't believe they should. And they should actually say why they do not want to comply. And I mean, I know that, like I said, I know there's other states. We are going to be starting petitions in other states. In the next couple of weeks, you may see your state come up. But again, we also want to help out candidates. Send me an email, Linda, Linda, at fightvoterfraud.org, and we'll get them scheduled. We do the taping. It takes us about 6 hours of editing. We'll put all of your information up there. When it's done, we send it to you and you push it out to your constituents, and we'll also be pushing it out as well. So I guess, Steve, that's pretty much it. You know, we're working hard to help this election. It is the most important election that we have, because as Reagan said, we're only, you know, one generation away from losing the United States. And right now you see the crazy things that are going on, right, Steve?
100%.
I mean, TDS is, you know, at a maximum right now, and that really is a mental illness. So they need to get help.
So your program is on OBBM Network, am I correct?
Yes, OBBM Network TV. We have it on Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, and a whole bunch of other social platforms. So please check us out, both the regular program and our candidate program. And please, Connecticut people, sign our petition on the website, and we will have some other states up there in the next week or so. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Linda. So we'll wrap this up today and saying thank you, Dan Sferiglio. He is broadcasting in many countries around the world. We're going to have a big event here in Broward County, Trump Day, September 19th. Anybody would like to come? There's going to be a lot of speakers. It is at the racetrack. It is at the Gulfstream Park and Casino. Last year, we had many of the celebrities there. We had over 450 people there. We want everybody to sign up for PRECINCTProjectUSA.org. If anybody wants to reach me as speakers or anybody has any information, you can call me at 954-562-5225, stern1054@gmail.com. You can go to Protect the Vote to sign up to be a poll watcher and poll workers in many states. We'd like you to get Dan Schultz's book, PRECINCTstrategy.com. And we'd like you to get a flag shirt. Go to www.theflagshirt.com. They sponsor this. We didn't have enough time to put a lot of commercials on today. We had so many great speakers. If you want to see this program again or you want to send it to anybody, go to Stern American Rumble. We'll see you in a few weeks. Thank you to War Room, Getter, Cloud Hub, OBBM Network in 38 states, Lindell TV, X, QTV, Facebook, YourNews.com, TotalNews.com. Many of our good friends who are podcasting this today, thank you so much. Action, action, action. Get involved. Good night, everybody. I'm Steve Stern, CEO of Flagshirt.com, a third-generation, veteran-owned small business. I believe that the American way of life is for all of us. I'm asking you today to visit Flagshirt.com. Help keep the American dream alive. Be a flag waver. Carry your nation's heritage. Use coupon code ACTION10 for 10% off site-wide and buy a flag shirt today. Action, action, action.